Hey everybody, welcome to the next edition of Cage My IQ. My name is D-Bake. I'll be joined by Sam and Miles shortly. Today we're going to talk about the UFC 257 pay-per-view this Saturday. We're also going to talk about Max Holloway's big win this Saturday and Carlos Condit's win as well with a unique takedown that he used. Plus, we're going to talk about the big announcement that we thought was going to happen on Saturday that wound up being a little letdown. But here's the intro to Cage My IQ, and then we'll get right on to the show. As always, I'm joined by, first off, Sam. He is one of our resident MMA bloggers. How's it going today, Sam?
It's going great, man. Thanks for having me, Beck, and just happy to be here.
Yep. And then also joined by Miles Long from the Last Rec podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm on my second energy drink, so I'm feeling good.
You can't beat that. And if you guys don't know him, he produces the Last Rec podcast. It's a great audio podcast. If you need something to listen to on your way or to from work, definitely listen to that. And then right before we get into everything, I got a comment. Gary chiming in with yo. And then before we break into any of the action that we got, we have to talk about, because Saturday was full of a lot of decisions that were great, not just boring fights. I believe every fight was decided with a finish, which was nice. But before we get into that, I want to bring you the video for one of our potential partnerships with Manscaped. Once again, that's Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. If you want to use a product to trim down there so your lady, girlfriend, or significant other is not mad about how it is down there, just use the Lawnmower 3.0. It's the best technology for trimming down there without nicking your balls. You just use promo code CMI2020 to get 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com. And once again, that's Manscaped. Your balls will thank you. Now we're going to get right into things right now, guys. The first topic we have on hand today in the UFC is Dana White's ABC showcase on Friday. As you saw Friday night, he had announced that he was going to meet with Khabib on Saturday during right before the UFC fight night card, where you saw him go into a room and then they were talking for an hour or so, and he was going to announce during the card the future of Khabib, which we found out was kind of a letdown, because what he said was that Khabib wasn't necessarily retiring yet, but he wants to fight. But he wants to see somebody stand out in these next couple of fights. He did say Charles Oliveira looked very nice, but I feel like he thinks that he's not there yet because he needs to fight somebody else. But he was pointing towards the card this week. I thought he was going to retire, and then they're going to have the main event be for the belt. But I think he's hinting towards he wants to see something from Connor McGregor and he wants to get that second fight with him so he can hit that 30 mark with one of the biggest guys in the sport who will produce the most money. What's your opinion on this, Sam?
All right. It was it was great at first. Khabib retired. His father just passed. He went out on top. It's the middle of January now. It's time to make a move. Either you're going to hold up the division or you're going to come back and fight. So, I mean, and to speak on the Connor thing, I don't think he wants to fight Connor with, just this disdain he has for him, the way things went down last time. He doesn't like Connor McGregor. He said it many times. And I don't think anything's going to stand out. He's already beat Poirier. I don't think Chandler, no matter if he does win, is going to get a title shot. I just think it's time to hang it up, man. He's already said he wasn't interested in the GSP fight anymore. Neither one of those guys are interested in that fight now. Retire. If you're not going to retire, then don't retire. But do something. Because right now, the way I see it, everybody gives him this GOAT status. Saturday was a complete waste of time. Now it's Monday. What is he not going to make his mind up again? It's just time to move on. The sport has to move on. The division has to move on, and do something. Tell us something. So that's pretty much what I got on it, man. It was a complete waste Saturday.
What do you think about this, Miles?
Oh, I'm completely shocked. See my shocked face right here? Not shocked. This was obvious. Of course he's coming back. I knew this was going to happen. So I kind of figured it would happen a little differently, but here's my thought process on this. So he retires, and the reason he gives is, well, I promised my mom I wouldn't fight without my dad, and since my dad passed away, it's like this big emotional thing. Where it's a thing he used to do with his dad. Now that his dad is not around, it's like, okay, now it's time for a new chapter in my life. But I think after the initial hit of losing his dad, I think it's the obvious thing to say, well, if that's a thing you did with your dad, then doing the thing will make you feel closer to your departed dad.
Yes.
So I think there's an emotional investment here for sure. There's also quite a bit of professional and financial investment on Khabib's behalf. I don't know if you remember back when we were talking about, I think it was 55 or 56, Shakarova was on the card and she was debuting. And in an interview, she talked about how her and her team worked a lot with Khabib and his team. And apparently what he's doing behind the scenes over in Russia, he's working with a lot of these smaller MMA teams out in the country, especially in areas where MMA isn't necessarily legalized yet. Like Shakarova was saying, that was a big thing for her personally, because in her part of Russia, it wasn't even legal to do MMA for a while. And then when they legalized it, she was the first person ever, much less a woman, to compete in the UFC out of her little podunk sticks ass part of Russia.
Yeah.
So Khabib has been putting in a significant effort to try to popularize the sport and let it grow, especially in his home country. And so he's going to be professionally involved, whether he's fighting or not. He's already invested there. But I think I also understand this as someone who used to do MMA, someone who used to fight competitively. When you're on a winning streak and when you sit at the top for a while, which for him, it wasn't even the while. It was 3 fights, 3 title defenses, maybe. I think he's hungry for more. And right now, I think, because it doesn't make any sense for him to come back financially or otherwise, because he's got all the money he needs. He could retire very comfortably right now from all the money he made. He could open a chain of MMA gyms with just stamp his name on there, charge $300 a month, and get 50% of the profits from each of the branch locations. He doesn't need to fight anymore. He could, he could do what Connor McGregor's doing with a bunch of these franchise deals. And hey, I'm Khabib, I'm Nurmagomedov. You want me to sell your dog sweaters? They'll sell. People will buy that shit just because his name is on it. So he also has pretty firmly established his reputation. I don't think he needs to go in and really prove anything anymore. But I think he hears people kind of whispering around saying hey, he has 29 wins, but only 5 of those actually mean anything, right? And so I think that's getting to him a little bit. And after, again, he got past that initial shock of losing his dad, I think he's hungry to get back in. And I think right now he's mostly like, all right, well, I'm not going to go full back in. I want like, basically, I think what he's going to do is let them fight it out and see who's like essentially the guy who's going to go for the title. He's like, all right, I want to fight that guy. And then I want my title back. And then I want to do more title defenses. I think that's what this is going to lead to, is he's going to want to get back into his title seat and then just kind of see how long he can hold it for. But yeah, I mean, I kind of saw this coming, but if you're going to act, just act, like do the thing, you know, like it is taking him a while to just decide. And then Dana White's like, oh, he might do the thing if he sees someone who he thinks is good enough. It's like, no, just hop back in. You'll be fine. Like you made it up to all the way to the top once already. You can do it again. So,
yep. We got Archie chiming in. Sammy's right. Khabib needs to make up his mind and figure it out. Fight or call it a career. He's got a reason. Want more of a reason than to finish a perfect 30-0. 20-0 is something, but 30-0 is more. If that's not enough, then give it up. And then he also said, personally, I'd rather see another Nate Diaz fight because he puts on a show. Win or lose, he doesn't quit. My thing on this is I think he's going to fight again, but there's been like these little nuances and these little like things here and there that for some reason I feel like he's going to wind up fighting Max Holloway. Like I've said this to a bunch of people the past couple of days. Right after Holloway fought, he said like he wants to fight Khabib. He wanted to fight him 2 years ago, but and then they had that press conference when he was supposed to go in and do the fight, and then it kind of fell through. Where like that's the fight that he wants. He wants that. But Dana White told him yesterday. He was like, "Just fly home." He was like, "You just fought," and then Max Holloway is like, "I'm not flying home. Like I'm staying here." In case somebody gets hurt, I'll be an alternate because I want to fight Khabib. And there's been this whole talk, like I'll get into a little bit about the unfinished business, but for some reason, I think that there's going to be a Khabib Max Holloway fight at lightweight. I just have a feeling for that. It's either that or you're going to see McGregor win Saturday. And then you see if he does it like really quick or like in great fashion, like a knockout, you're going to see Khabib go, I'm 29-0. This guy is like the money man when it comes to UFC. All of his fights produce a lot of money. I can get to that 30-0 by fighting him a second time, and I can make a lot of money on top of it. And then I can just call it quits after that, and I would have had and then I get a big payday out of it because I fought Connor McGregor again. And then if I win there, then there's no ifs, ands, or buts about the first fight where Connor McGregor said that he didn't take it seriously because he was going in and out. Like McGregor is actually training now, getting ready for a fight. He's taking it seriously. And Dana White has said that he expects McGregor to fight 3 times this year, with this being the first time. And then McGregor actually came out and said, that's true. He's like, I'm fighting 3 times this year. Expect the real McGregor to be ready. So I do feel like he's going to be fighting. And I just think that he wants to wait. I think he's going to, they're doing the whole like wrestling thing where they're going to make it like a spectacle where McGregor wins and then he does this. Even if he loses, or whatnot, maybe Khabib goes to make his decision, and then Max comes out and says, "Hey," he was like, "I want you now. Like I'm due a title shot. We got Volkanovski, who is about to fight Ortega in March. They just booked that, so I'm going to be waiting a while. I'll fight you. Like I've been waiting for this type of big fight. Like." And let's do it for your belt. I'll move up. I fought guys like McGregor and Poirier. He's lost them, but it's a big difference for like a volume guy to fight at featherweight than it is to move up to lightweight, where I think would value Holloway more with how he punches and how he boxes. Like he's very quick. He has endurance. He could be a guy where he can kind of slow down Khabib. He'd be a nice faux for him for like a last fight. And they would make a lot of money because a lot of people are like Holloway. He's a likable guy. He's from Hawaii. He's just that guy. But that's what I think. I think he's not done. But go from that to the co-main event of that fight, of that card on Fight Night. Carlos Condit defeated Brown 30-27 and debuted a more solid wrestling and grounding game. Where does he go from here? I'll start with you, Miles.
I didn't see it. I went to Buffalo Wild Wings, and then they weren't showing it, which is weird because when you walk in on the door, there's a thing that says "Home of the UFC," and I was like, "You guys aren't even showing the fights. Like, what is this?" And then I was like, "Well, can you do my TV?" Because I was like right underneath them. I'm like, "What's just that one?" And she's like, "Guy, come on, just eat your tacos and leave." I was like, "All right." So no, I just cried into my street tacos the whole night and then went home.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll go to you, Sam.
All right, man, I've got to tell you, at the end of that fight, Matt Brown looked like he was expecting a different score.
Yes.
Like when they announced 30-27 unanimous decision, and I don't know what fight how he thought that was going to play. But even in the first round, even though Carlos was underneath for a good part of that round, he was still more active than Matt Brown. That Carlos Condit that showed up looked like the Carlos Condit of old. He looked good. He had fluidity in his movement. Striking was just as crisp as ever. And he definitely got his wrestling games, I think, more improved now than ever. That sweep, I think, was in the second. Was that the second round, the sweep?
Yes.
He threw a body sweep on Matt Brown and it came out of nowhere. It was beautiful. He fought great from the bottom, defended himself well, got out of positions really well. I think Carlos I had it picked. I thought if Santiago Ponzinibbio won his fight and Carlos Condit won his fight, I thought that would be the next fight to make. Carlos Condit's got another run in him, guys. A lot of people are kind of, every time you hear him mentioned, yeah, he is an OG, but they kind of say, hey, were you going to fight Dan Hardy when he comes back, or Nick Diaz if he ever comes back? I think Carlos Condit can still hang with the young pups in there, and I think he can make a serious run for the title, one more serious run for the title. He looked really good, but then the other question comes to mind. Well, Matt Brown was 40 in this fight. Carlos Condit is 36. Now, I'm 35. Those aren't old ages, but it's kind of older and seasoned for the professional fight game. So then the question comes in, well, has he really, he looked good against guys like Court McGee, who is around the same age, and Matt Brown. Now we need to get him in there for his next fight. I think he needs a top 10 guy. Maybe I really couldn't play matchmaker, but he's talked about wanting the Nick Diaz fight. I would love to see that, So there's a lot of options for him.
Yeah, they floated a name around there. Was it Vicente Anique? Luque. They floated that name around after the fight. They said that's one that could potentially happen, that they would like to see booked, because he hasn't fought lately. So you can book that. He's hungry. I believe he's ranked number 9. I think he is in the top 10.
Yeah, Luque is in the top 10.
So that would be the top 10 fight that you would want, and then anybody would want, and then they'd get him back in there because you could see Condor do that fight, potentially win, and then get a potential top 5 fight, and then try and work his way back to that title shot that he once had the belt for it. I know he was the interim title holder, but he still had the title.
The best guys. He fought GSP. Just imagine him versus Wonderboy if that fight happened. What a fight that would be. But I mean, he's still got some name brand to him, and he could. I'm telling you, man, he's still got it.
Yeah, but you mentioned that nice sweep that he did. I actually have a picture of it right here for the viewers right now. Right beautiful. There. Let me get that out right there. But he just came up, like he literally came up and he just did it really quickly. He was like, boom, got him there. He caught Brown by surprise. The Brown didn't expect it, and he just sweeped him down and got him out. And then he got on top. it was so nice because it was so fluid how he did it. He didn't even run up. It was kind of like he kind of did like this power walk into it, like boom, and then he pulled
And
it
he never
out of
saw it
nowhere.
coming.
He never saw
Never
it
saw
coming.
it coming.
But I agree with you. Like, I don't know what Brown was thinking. Like, I personally had it 29-28 because the first round I gave it to Brown because he did control the first round with the takedown, and then he had him on the ground. But like you said, he did that in rounds 2 and 3 kind of too. But when he did it, he was like tired. He had him down. He didn't do anything, and then Condit got out a couple times and switched guard. He switched guard, or he was just constantly punching him from the back. He had more strikes by a lot. And that's why the judges gave it to him, because he was the one kind of dictating the fight, even on his back, because the third round, Brown was done. He took him down, but he was done.
Completely gassed.
He was spelled. There was nothing left in the tank. He basically was conceding just with taking him down and hopefully holding him and getting that win. But you can't do that anymore. In the old UFC, like 3-4 years ago, you could
lay and pray.
Yeah, you could lay and pray like a John Fitch style. Like, he would just lay on top of you and get the round when they valued takedowns more. But now it's more balanced. So fighters don't have to worry about that. The wrestlers aren't, as they say, OP now, because you can get a takedown, but if a guy outstrikes you or outpunches you, they kind of weigh it the same way to value all the different fight styles. But
a lot of people were disappointed that I talked to after the fight, because they were expecting, everybody was expecting fireworks. Both of these guys can really bang in there. But I tell you, on both sides, I mean, Matt Brown didn't look bad in the first. I mean, he's always had kind of a strong wrestling game.
Yeah.
But I thought that fight was a great fight.
The game plan. He goes in with the game plan and he sticks to it. You look at the Nick Diaz thing. Nick Diaz complained that he kept running. He kept running because he would hit him, circle around, kind of like how Dominic Reyes was with John Jones. He would hit him, circle him around, hit him on the sides, not let Nick Diaz be in front of him to get the open shots, because Nick Diaz is great with his boxing, and he has the endurance, and he just hit him. And even like in boxing, you got Floyd Mayweather. That's what he does. You don't give your opponent the chance to hit you the way he wants to hit you, and that's what Carlos Condit does. He comes up with a game plan and he goes with it. Like, it kind of fell away a couple of years ago, but now it seems like he's back on track. He's getting back into the top 10, his form of old, where he can do what he needs to do. And I think his ground game has improved tremendously since then. Like, he can get on the back, but he can get out of it now. He can fight on his back. He can do what he needs to do to continue to gain points. And I'm excited to see who he fights next. But
I got to tell you, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
I actually interviewed him before the fight. You can actually check that out on my articles, Devil's Advocate. It's a Carlos Condit interview before the fight. And he had told me, and I don't think it made the interview. You got to forgive me. I'm not really a pro like you guys when it comes to technology. But he had told me one fight he was interested in is Nate Diaz. He would like to fight Nate at welterweight. He's already fought Nick. He said Nate really intrigued him. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I don't think Nate will make it back to welterweight, but
I think
that would be a really entertaining fight.
I think he is welterweight anyway, because that's what he fought. Yeah. Because
I thought he was lightweight.
No, he's welterweight, because that's what him and Connor McGregor fought. And then you got to remember when Nate fought Masvidal, they did it at welterweight. So he has done a couple of lightweight fights, but he's done a lot of his fights lately at welterweight. So I could see that. You could see that fight. And then Dana White did say that he was booking Nate Diaz, but he wasn't going to announce it yet.
Gaethje is what I'm hearing. Gaethje. That's what I'm reading all over Google is Gaethje.
But then again, I've heard Gagey against Olivier. I've heard
that too.
I've heard that too, because you got to know that Olivier is warranting a top 3 fight now with how he beat up
broke
Ferguson.
my heart. Broke my heart.
And then let's not forget, like I said before, Khabib has said that he thought that Olivier looked very good in his fight, and he's impressed with him. So
that would be a fight. What would Khabib do if he got Charles Oliveira on the ground? I don't think he could. I mean, that dude's a Brazilian. He showed me something with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu game that I didn't know he was capable of handling Tony like that. So that'd be a good fight.
Yep. But to go from that,
a boring fight, actually. Here's the thing. Yeah, here's the thing. When you watch Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys or even grapplers at that high of a level, you're like, oh man, this is going to be amazing. Like when you look on YouTube and you look up like, Henner Gracie goes up against one of the Machida guys. You're like, holy shit, this is going to be crazy. And then you watch it, you're like, dude, this is super boring. They're just like front guard, some side control, and then they stall out.
If you enjoy like grappling, though, that would be a great match.
If you enjoy very technical but like very minute grappling, yeah, absolutely, because they're not going to make these like big things that we're like, oh, he made a mistake, I can do this cool sweep now. No, it's probably going to be like a very low key, like most fans, you'll probably hear like the booing. They're like, no, punch each other. But I think it wouldn't be an eventful fight. But it would be interesting to see the Sambo and the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu kind of clash, because they're stylistically a little bit different. But because like Sambo is a little bit more wrestling, heavy pressure top game, whereas Jiu-Jitsu is more like, especially with Oliveira, work from your back, try to slip in those submissions when you can. So I'd be interested to see which of those win out in the end. But it wouldn't be like the
wouldn't be fireworks.
Yeah, it would be like Dan Hooker and Poirier. It wouldn't be like that fight. It would be a lot more boring, but it'd be cool though.
Yeah, but to go from that co-main event to the main event of the night, which was great, we had Max Holloway, who demolished Calvin Kattar. Should he move up, or does he have unfinished business? Before I get your guys' opinion, I just want to go to another picture that I had of the fight we had right here, and let me move this out. But in this fight, we saw 744 most significant strikes attempted in a fight. We also saw 445 most big strikes landed, then 274 most big head strikes in a fight. And then last but not least, 117 most big body strikes in a fight, which mainly was from blessed Max Holloway, who was just a man possessed in this fight. He came in, dominated, and then left. And then he did a lot of trash talking in between, which was the best part. I loved it. What did you think of it, Sam?
Max Holloway was on what I like to call God mode on that Saturday night fight. He came in, he was quiet all through fight week. He didn't really say a lot. And when he came in, a lot of people were betting on Calvin Kattar to come in and be the one to dethrone, Holloway's greatness. I mean, he's a beast. I mean, they don't call him the Boston finisher for nothing. He's got power. Max Holloway's pure volume and output completely shut him out from round one on out. Kattar landed a few good shots here and there, but the volume, like I said, the fluidity, his movement, and his footwork. I thought he looked good when he fought Brian Ortega. He made that look like a prelim fight. That if that Max Holloway shows up to fight, a lot of people are saying Volkanovski is still going to be the champ, but he's still got to get through Brian Ortega. But whoever fights Max Holloway next, and that Max Holloway shows up, he's going to blister him, man. It's going to be scorched earth for somebody. He came in there with a game plan, and the main thing, no sparring in his camp. He did no sparring whatsoever. Came in there and looked like he looked fresh, man. Everything looked good. Talking trash to the commentators in the 5th round while he was putting on a show. Hats off to Kattar. He took a tremendous beating. probably should have been stopped in the 4th round, honestly, because
round 3.
yeah, I mean, he was taking a beating, but he still hung in there and showed the kid's tougher than a Waffle House steak, man. He's legit. You know, let him get some seniority, few miles under his belt, and he'll come back to fight another day. But as far as Max Holloway moving up in weight, I think he needs to stay exactly where he's at. He doesn't bring his power with him. He when he fought Poirier, when he did move up, he didn't look like the Max that I knew at featherweight. So I think, and I definitely don't think he wants any of the Khabib smoke, man. That's a bad matchup for him.
I think he wants it, and I think that he could take it.
Ooh, I don't know, man. Khabib, you know, Khabib's fought strikers. Khabib's fought guys that can move like Holloway, and you know, he shuts him down. But Holloway, he needs to stay right where he's at. He'll get that belt back. I thought he won the second Volkanovski fight, to be honest with you. So,
did you see what Volkanovski said yesterday?
No.
He said that if Max Holloway thinks that he could do that to him, he has another thing coming for him.
I mean, there is a big difference between Volkanovski and Kattar. Don't get me wrong, but if that Max Holloway shows up to fight anybody, he's taking on the belt. I mean, he. I don't care who you are. He was just on a whole nother level Saturday night. He was untouchable. Only reason he got touched is because he got sloppy, you know, showing off or wanting to slug it out for the fans. If he wanted to, he would have been untouched that night. He looked so good.
I thought the fight could have had like a different outcome, not like saying he would have lost, but I think Kattar made one big mistake, and they kept mentioning it during the fight. He kept letting Max Holloway dictate the first strike instead of hitting him first. And then whenever Kattar actually hit him first, he stopped him from getting those combinations that he kept on rearing off like they're just no other. Like he kept getting those strikes. But when Kattar would hit him first with like an uppercut or just a jab, he caught him
then he
stunned him. Yeah. And it stunned him for a second, but then he wouldn't continue to do it. He would just go back to the normal, I'm going to let Max Holloway dictate, hit me, and then I'm going to try and counter him back. If he would have went with that strategy of, I'm going to make sure that I hit him first, he probably would have had a better outcome, and it might have been, he might have lost, but it would have been like a 3-2 type 3 rounds.
He was waiting. He was waiting to counter, pretty much.
Yeah,
he was waiting to counter.
He should have been the aggressor, because if you looked at his past 2 fights, he always that's been a bad thing with them. Even with the Khabib one that he did, that he could have won that. He always starts out slow, and then by round 2 or 3, he then hulks up, and then he starts going on a melee mission, and then he winds up either winning or, like in the Khabib one, he lost it by 1 round because he started out slow in round 1, which would have made the difference for him. But in all those fights, he was hitting first. He was being the aggressor. He wasn't waiting. He was attacking first, and then it was having a great effect on him. And that's why he got to this point where he got this fight against Max Holloway, and then for some reason he changes his game plan for it. I don't know why he did it, but he decided to do it. I'm surprised no one asked him why he did it in a post-fight interview. I don't know if they did or not, but I didn't hear anything about it. But I'm just surprised that he was able to take all those punches and punishment and then keep going. Like, I'm like, at one point he's going like this, looking like it was like a Mortal Kombat with a fatality. I was waiting for him to fall down. And then kudos to Herb Dean for keeping it going, because he got back up and then he was punching him while he was groggy. I'm like, I'm like, damn, if he can punch this wobbly, why can't he punch better when he's upright and sane? Because he was punching better that way when he was half out of it. And I'm just
Holloway took him completely out of his game with the volume.
Yep. And then you got like I could see guys that can compel it, like you said, Volkanovski. The difference between Kattar and Volkanovski is Volkanovski later in the second Holloway fight was able to control the fight because he started to take him down with the ground game, and then he controlled him for the last couple fights. I mean, fights the last couple rounds. You can say Volkanovski won it or Holloway won it. Either way, like it was kind of a close one when you thought about it because he kept on taking him down, and then in the first couple of rounds it was all Holloway, but then starting round 3, that's the one that was either way, and then from that point on, I had it as Volkanovski with the ground game because he just controlled. He tired Holloway a little bit. He had to answer for the shots because he made sure that the fight wasn't upright, whereas Kattar didn't do that. You were expecting him to do it. He took 2-3 chances and then he just abandoned it. It just didn't work because he doesn't have the ground wrestling game as Volkanovski does. And then the reason I think Holloway is going to gun for Khabib now is it also came out that Volkanovski is eyeing a fight with McGregor. He wants McGregor, and he basically called him out on Twitter yesterday. And you got all these call outs and all these potential fights with like McGregor, Khabib, Volkanovski, Holloway. I'm all for it. Like you got this featherweight going against this lightweight and vice versa between two different groups. Like imagine that. Imagine having Holloway and Khabib and then McGregor and Volkanovski, one fighter from each weight class, and then have that happen. And then what you could do is have the winners face each other. You make a lot of money from that. So that's how I feel about this. Were you able to catch this, Miles, or catch any highlights of this?
No, not particularly, but actually it's interesting that you kind of framed that, what you said there just a second ago, in that particular way, where there's like all these guys from different weight classes who want to fight each other and like, oh, these could be pretty good fights, you know? When I was doing my, it was not this week, or not last week, but the week before, I did a podcast episode. And in one of my segments, I talked about specifically trans rights and having trans people compete in sports, because that's kind of a big hot button issue. And I specifically talked about like combat sports like the UFC. And what I was saying is like, well, now that we have more of an understanding of how like gender identity works and stuff like that, and there are these athletes who deserve to be able to participate if they put in the work and they do the time, they're just as valid as everybody else. And so what's probably going to end up happening at some point in the future is that we're going to have to redefine how we look at things like divisions and weight classes, because over time, well, traditionally we've only really divided fighters into categories based on 2 factors, right? Their gender and their weight, and that's it. And as a result, sometimes we get these like crazy mismatches within a division, like John Jones being like a giant with this ridiculous reach and strength, and everybody's like, what can I do against that? Like, why do I have to fight this guy? And it seems like a lot more, it would be more interesting if we had more factors for how we classified fighters, right? Like if we didn't just take gender and weight into account, if we took into account like body structure, we took into account build, we took into account muscle mass, we can even take into account, because conservatives cry about how much testosterone is in someone's system. We can do a test for that now. And I think it would kind of lead to a point where we'd be able to see a lot of these fights, because if we start to redefine how we stratify fighters, what we would be looking at is more, I guess, more equal matchups, which would be more interesting to watch. Like we could have these sort of this breakdown of traditional weight classes and go, well, why can't that guy fight this guy? That'd be a cool fight. Let's see that. Like, hell yeah. It's like in Japan, they have the, what's it called? The all Japan national. It's for judo. Okay. And it's basically a big judo brawl, no weight classes. Everybody goes in, regardless of how heavy or how light you are, how strong you are, you're all competing on the same level. And there was a guy in there, very famous judoka. I forget his name. I'm not good with Japanese names. I think his name was Tanaka, but within his weight division, he just like dominated. But he ended up losing to a guy just because he was a monster. Like he was just really big and he couldn't do anything. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see these fights, and hopefully going forward, we could start to kind of address lots of issues with one basic solution, right? Like we can start looking at, well, we want to see these interesting fights with these interesting fighters that otherwise wouldn't be able to happen with the current weight class system. And then we can also start integrating trans people into combat sports and just into sports in general. It's kind of ridiculous that we're even having this discussion in 2021 and being like, well, I don't know, do they really deserve to play sports though? But no, I think that'd be cool. Just kind of a funny how things lined up on that.
Yep. And then for the people that are just tuning in, just to recap, we just talked about Khabib and then the decision that wasn't made yet on Saturday. And then we also talked about the Carlos Condit fight and where he goes from here. And then we just talked about Max Holloway, and then same thing where he goes, and then how well he looked on Saturday with all the boxing that he did, trash talking, and he's definitely in line for some sort of title shot, whether it's against Volkanovski Ortega winner or against Khabib. But before we go into the predictions part of the show, here's our social media video.
Get the Lambo car, house in the hills with the stars. Told you I'd raise the bar, told you that I go far. Baby, it's crystal clear. I'm not a souvenir. I'm not an accessory. I'm a necessity. So come and check me out now. I'm a necessity. So come and check me out now.
We are The Buzz. You can find us on social media, on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter under WTBDOTCOM, which is WTB.com. And then you can also find us on Instagram. Subscribe to our pages, show some love, give our all of our articles and live podcast comments, and don't hesitate, because we won't hesitate to comment back. And then if you have any comments on any of the stuff that we're talking on right now, put a comment in the comment section, and then we'll bring it out, and then we'll talk about it. But getting started with the predictions part, we're going to do just one fight from Wednesday, which is the main event, which is Michael Chiesa against Neil Magny at the welterweight division. Kind of a light, lackluster card on Wednesday due to a couple fights on the card being pulled because of injury or COVID. But this one is really good, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. What are your predictions for this fight? I'll start with you, Miles.
So this one's kind of interesting because if you look at the stats, and that's the only thing you use to judge this fight, the stats kind of lead you to the most probable outcomes, but they kind of inform it in a different way. Like if you looked at the stats and you made conclusions, you'd probably be coming to the wrong conclusions on how the fight would go rather than the results, right?
Yes.
So based on the stats, it looks like we would expect to see a KO from Magny, if that's how that fight went. If there was a submission victory, it'd be Chiesa. I think I'm saying that right. Chiesa. Yeah. Oh wow, I was not saying that right. I'm not good with names. And if it went to decision, we'd expect to see Magny. Because it looks like Magny has all like the striking advantages. He lands like 2 more strikes per minute. He's got an 8% higher significant strike rate, and I think it's like 5% better striking defense overall. And then Chiesa has like 1.3 more takedowns on average, 7% better takedown accuracy, and 10% better takedown defense. And he's got like at least 1.2 more submissions on average. So that's a big one. And then, of course, Magny has a lot more decision victories. I think it's like 23% more of his wins go by decision. Now, even though Magny doesn't have very many submission victories. He's actually a pretty high level grappler. Like when I was watching and kind of looking back through some of his fights to get an idea of how he does things, he spends a lot of time wrestling, a lot of time going to the ground, not really working on the ground so much. He's got a very heavy pressure top game, so he can do some ground and pound stuff and just kind of put you in inconvenient positions. But he's actually a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, but we don't see it that often. That's the thing. So it'd be interesting to see how this would go if he went up against Chiesa, who on paper is actually supposed to be worse. He's only a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, and yet Chiesa finishes more regularly. Like 65% of his wins are by submission. So I think it'd be interesting to see these two fight, just because this is probably going to be mostly a grappling match, like wrestling and then some groundwork. I don't think we're going to see a lot of striking here, mostly because one, Magny, he can strike. He's not a big power striker though. He doesn't have a lot of stopping power. Like he's not like a John Jones or a Poirier or a Gaethje. You know, you see guys take Magny's strikes and they just kind of eat them and keep going, you know? Now over time those add up, but it's not like any one hit is going to be like, oh man, like they're not seeing stars from his crosses necessarily. Maybe like the 20th cross, yeah, but not like the first couple. So I think what's going to end up happening is Magny's going to, do his best to keep Chiesa in striking range, but Chiesa's main move is like, I'm going to kind of use ornamental striking to get close enough to wrestle. Like that's really where he wants to be. He's not really a striker. He just kind of goes, and then since his hands are out, he's like, oh, I got you now. And then he goes to his wrestling. So I think we're going to see quite a bit of wrestling, a lot of pinning against the cage, a lot of reverses, a lot of throws. Now, what'll be interesting is the ground game, because we're going to get to see Magny's sort of underrated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ability. So I'm interested to see if he's going to go for these submission attempts, because he usually doesn't. He usually, does top position stuff, some ground and pound stuff. He doesn't do a whole lot of like, oh, I'm going to, try this. Oh, you gave me an opportunity to take your back, and I'm going to go for the rear naked. Like he doesn't do that very often. But that's exactly what Chiesa does. He's very fluid. As soon as he gets a position and he's like, all right, I'm going to try this submission. Oh, that didn't work. I'm going to try this submission. Oh, you did a thing. I'm going to go to side control. How did he do that? He did it, and he's there. And most of the time the fighter's like, what just happened? He's like a spider monkey sometimes. So overall, I think the most likely scenario is that, again, this is going to be kind of a long grappling match between standing up against the cage and going to the floor. There's a pretty decent chance, I think, they both end up going the distance, because I think Magny's going to be able to, for the most part, handle himself on the ground. So a lot of Chiesa's submission attempts may not be successful. So they might kind of be able to stalemate each other out there. However, if Magny is able to keep him in striking range just enough to kind of inhibit Chiesa's movements, then I think we're going to see probably a lot of like top position ground and pound stuff that could result in a KO for Magny. But if it doesn't, because again, he doesn't have that big stopping power, it could just be he's scoring points. So at the end of the day, if this ends up going the distance and nobody's knocked out, I'd see a Magny victory by decision. Now, if Chiesa's like really on his game the whole fight and he's taking advantage of every opportunity, I think there's a possibility here he could win by submission. I think it's small though. I don't think it's a big potential for him. And then of course, potential ground and pound knockout for Magny if he just gets enough opportunities to just kind of pound him with those hammer fists. But which is exactly what the statistics would lead you to believe. It's just a kind of a different result than what you would assume.
No. What about you, Sam?
I think it's actually going to be a good fight. I think they're going to throw leather. Ever since Chiesa's moved up to welterweight, he's a different fighter completely. He looks good. His last win was against a tough Rafael dos Anjos, and which, dos Anjos wasn't the same at welterweight as he is at lightweight, but at the same time, Chiesa looked good. He shows a lot of improvement. Magny is just a tough, gritty fighter. I mean, he's been in there and toughed it out with some of the hardest punchers in the division. I'm going to have to go with Magny by knockout, though. That's what I'm predicting.
Yeah, this was tough for me because I've watched Chiesa ever since he was on Ultimate Fighter. A lot of people forget he was on the show, and then he did really well, of course. But they have I would say they have similar type styles, but they go about it a different way, if that makes sense. Because you look at Magny, he looks like this lanky guy, and you think he'd use it to his advantage, getting the guy on his back and then just use that to his advantage, but he doesn't really do that. He does. I feel like he does everything a little bit well, but he doesn't dominate in any way, whereas Chiesa is really good with the wrestling game. I feel like he tries to use that. He tries to wear his opponent out, but I've seen Magny knock a couple guys out, and then he has that power. He just doesn't do it a lot. But I think this is a fight that'll work well on that, and I could see him like getting a knockout in, say, the second round. But it all depends on how he defends the takedowns of Chiesa, because Chiesa will do that, and he'll try and do that several times to get the game, the fight on the ground, and to control everything, and then do the ground and pound. But I feel like he's going to get caught. He's usually prone to that at times. They both are, but I think Magny's more the advantage of taking advantage of a mistake of his opponent than Chiesa is. And I got this as a second round knockout for Neil Magny, and then he moves on and gets a better fight out of it. But to move from that fight to Saturday's UFC 257 pay-per-view, and now we're going to do the predictions for that. And the first fight that we have on here, the opening fight, is a women's strawweight division matchup between Marina Rodriguez and Amanda Ribas. What is your take from this fight, Sam?
Well, a lot of people don't really know Marina Rodriguez. I've followed her since the Contender. She's a well-rounded striker. She's beaten some pretty good fighters in there. I got Randa Marcos being one of them, Tisha Torres, Jessica Aguilar. But she also had the fight with Cynthia Calvillo. I remember that fight. It was a really good fight, and it turned out to be a draw. So she's got a draw on her record, but she's a tough contender. But I just think Amanda Ribas is she's on a hot streak right now. She's got really she's replacing somebody. No, Marina Rodriguez is replacing Michelle Watterson. This was supposed to be Michelle Watterson fighting, but I think either way Ribas takes it. She's a well-rounded competitor, and she's moving up quick.
Yep. What about you, Miles?
I think this one's pretty open and shut. I mean, Marina Rodriguez, she's not bad. She's just not better than Amanda Ribas. That's all it is. Like on paper, she's got some Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Ribas is both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo black belt, as well as is being trained by her father in Muay Thai since she was a little girl. Like on paper, it's pretty clear who's got the advantage in terms of training. And then when you actually watch them in the ring, it becomes more apparent, right? Rodriguez, she moves well, and she's got a good sense of timing, but she takes time to build up steam. She's a second round fighter. She doesn't really come out swinging. She doesn't come out doing anything all that impressive in the first round. She's building up her momentum. And she's got a lot of striking power for her size and in her division, but it comes at a cost. She tends to, for these big hits, she overswings, and overall her striking is less technically proficient, but the trade-off is it's more powerful, because in striking, technical proficiency basically means it's a balance between offense and defense at any given moment. But striking without technical proficiency isn't wrong. You can do it. You just have to be better at other things. And I'll talk about that. We got another fight coming up where I want to expand on this. But basically, you can be sloppy, and if you hit people real hard and it works, like that, it works. You did the thing.
Yeah.
So So that's basically what her striking looks like. But the problem is it creates a lot of openings in her guard. And of course, Ribas being the more technical striker is going to go, oh, good. I got lots of places to hit you now. So she's got good kicks. Her legs give her a lot of reach. So I think her striking game is going to have to revolve around that a lot. I don't think it's going to help a lot. But if I was her coach, I'd be telling her to do a lot of Muay Thai kicks. I would kick her in the ribs, kick her in the stomach, keep her off of you, try to problem solve. Don't go to the ground. Do not grapple with Ribas. That will not go well. What else I got here? So she builds up steam, second round fighter. But as she sees more openings, she gets more aggressive. But again, when she gets more aggressive, it creates more openings in her guard. So she's going to have to be real careful with that exchange of like, oh, I want to hit her. But then at the same time, she might be walking straight into like a nasty cross or a nasty hook. And that might be it for her. Now, what's interesting is her striking is more evenly distributed across the body. Like she kind of peppers the head, the torso. She goes for the legs, whereas Ribas is a little bit more head, stomach area, and doesn't do too much on the legs. She's a good wrestler. She's got good clinch defense. She can defend takedowns. She's clearly more comfortable standing than she is on the ground. Obviously, she's not a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So like all the things she's not great at, Ribas is good at, right? She's very comfortable on the ground. She's fine going down there and submitting you, no problem. She's very strong. So I think like pound for pound, that's going to be a problem when it comes to wrestling stuff because she's more technically proficient with her judo black belt, but she can also kind of just force her to do things because she's stronger. So yeah, I mean, pretty much I see this as Ribas wins by submission in first or second round easily because, I mean, I think most of her wins tend to come from submission, but that tends to be where she's most comfortable and where she slips in those things you don't see coming. So I think Rodriguez is gonna make a mistake, and it's gonna be something where she's on a top position and she's trying to maybe do a ground and pound, maybe just trying to hold position to the end of the round. And then Ribas is going to slip in an arm bar and just end it right there. I think that's exactly what happened with the last fight she was in. I can't remember. I can't say the name. That's the one. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Paige VanZant, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. She did not see that coming. And she's like, what? Arm bar? What? So I think it's going to be a similar story.
Yep, and for me, like you guys said, you got Marina Muay Thai and striking background, and then Ribas has like a grappling Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background. Watching that fight with Ribas and Paige VanZant, granted VanZant was kind of, her head wasn't in it. I think what she's doing now is she's putting more focus into a fight, but Ribas took that fight, even though I think in the long run, Paige VanZant is going to be a really well-rounded fighter. Ribas is she's the up-and-comer right now. She does a lot of things well. The big plus for Marina is she is the better, as we say, striker. She's better at striking. So if this is a stand-up game, it advantages goes in her way. But as you said, Ribas isn't that far off with her striking. She's been improving fight by fight with it. She can hold her own with that. But the big difference here is the grappling, and that to me, Ribas is heads and toes ahead of Maria with that. She can control the fight with that. Go with the takedowns and the ground and pound with that, or just with the submissions, like you said. I see this going. And to me, this is the first round fight, and I feel like Ribas is going to knock her out. That's how I feel like. She did it to VanZant. She caught her on the ground. I think she's going to take her down and then just catch her on the ground because Maria is going to try and stand up, and I feel like she's going to catch her. It's either that. The other option I see is a round 2 submission. She's going to tire her out on the ground, and she's going to force Marina into a position that she doesn't want to be in. She's going to move around, try and get out, and then that's when Ribas is going to control it and then get her with the rear naked choke. So either a round 1 knockout or a round 2 rear naked choke submission by Ribas. But all in all, I have big aspirations for her future, and I feel like she is going to be a champion to me, as she's going to be a player in the division in the near future, more so in the next year or so. And then that's what I think about that. And then moving on to the next one, we got a lightweight division matchup between Matt Frevola and Otman Zatar. What do you think about this, Miles?
This one I feel is kind of on a similar vein in terms of like it's pretty open and closed for me. So you got Matt Frevola. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and some kickboxing, and he's got a lot of natural power in his striking, but he's not good at it. like from a technical standpoint, he can hit real hard, and he's got a lot of forward pressure in his game. But when you watch him strike, you're like, he's not a striker. He's a grappler learning to strike, right? And that's how he's always kind of been. And it seems like his striking game has been, it's improving. It's just improving at a very slow rate. So he cannot stand in trade with Al-Zatir, I think it's Al-Zatar. He can't stand in trade with that guy. I think the biggest difference there is the fact that Al-Zatar is a 2 or 3 time Muay Thai world champion. You learning to strike and getting progressively better does not qualify you to fight a 2 or 3 time Muay Thai world champion. It's just not going to go well for you. And unfortunately, Frevola is the guy, he does like to stand and trade. That is the thing he thinks he's good at. He's like, because I can hit real hard. So I think he assumes his natural power will take him further than it can, especially up against a guy like Al-Zatir, or Al-Zatar, my bad. I think another issue for Frevola might be gassing out, especially I think when he gets like hit real hard and he gets hurt. You see his game change like immediately. It's very, very noticeable right away. Now he does have a good chin on him. He can absorb punches pretty well, but there is a limit to that, I think, because once he takes enough damage, he just tries to do some wrestling and I'm going to take him to the ground, because really that's where he should be. He's most of his background, again, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. That's where his strength is. It's not in his striking. Now he's good at snapping up dominant positions while he's on the ground. And, that's where he's, all right, I'm going to keep these top positions and then hit these submissions whenever they present themselves. And what he's really good at is he doesn't overcommit to any one submission. A lot of guys, they'll burn themselves out trying to do this one submission. Like they really, really want it, but there's just something that's out of place and you're just burning your own energy, just trying to force it into place. He'll do one thing and go, oh, that's not working. And then he'll just flow over to the next thing. He'll do this 3 or 4 times until something sticks. And he's very good at that. He bides his time on the ground, like I said, and he just waits for the right opportunity. Now, Al-Zatir, again, he's got some jiu-jitsu. He's not nearly as strong of a grappler. So these are two ends of two opposite poles. On one end, you got a really good striker, but not a great grappler. You got a great grappler, but not a great striker. With Al-Zatar, his power is definitely there. He's a power striker, and what's interesting is he's pretty clean with it too, which means he's got a lot of natural strength behind that striking power. Let's see. He does sometimes overcommit and create holes in his guard, but I don't think that's really going to be an issue against Frevola, just because he doesn't have the technical know-how to really, really take advantage of that. It would just be more if he can get a general sense of timing and he gets real lucky, maybe he can find one of those openings. Now, while Zatar doesn't have good grappling, I would say, or at least not as good of grappling, he does have good takedown defense. So that's, I think, going to be another sticking point here, because even though he's not great on the ground, he is good at kind of keeping himself out of danger. If he hits the ground, he's pretty good at getting back to his feet. He doesn't spend too much time down there. He can problem solve if he really has to, but overall, his strength is just maintaining overall control of just, striking interactions. If he goes to the ground, he's like, I'm not comfortable here, and he gets back to where he is comfortable. So overall, I see a win by knockout by Al-Zatir. I can't say that guy's name. Every time I look at him, I'm like, Al-Zatar. There it is. Jesus Christ. But I see it as like a first or second round knockout. Now I think Frevola has a possibility of winning by submission. But the issue is going to be taking down Azatar and keeping him there long enough to make that happen. And I think what's going to happen, he's going to get worn down by striking because he's not going to be able to trade very effectively. And the opportunities he does get to get Azatar on the ground, he's just going to lose it too quickly. He's not going to have the time he needs to work effectively and go, okay, let's try this submission. Oh, that didn't work. Let me move to the next one. I think it's going to hit the ground, get right back up, and he's like, oh, good, back to the thing I'm not good at. So, there's a small chance for a submission victory, but again, it's pretty fleeting. He'd have to catch him at just the right moment. And of course, if it goes to decision, I would say just based on the stats, if we look at Azatir, he deals more significant strikes with like a 14% margin. Frevola absorbs, I think it's 4.2 more hits per minute on average. But overall, Frevola does have more decision victories. So I think just the factor of more effective punches more often, and this guy over here not good at defending those punches, he eats them a lot of the time, points to a KO. But at the end of the day, I think experience does win out when it comes to defend or to decision victories. Like when you rack them up, you kind of get a sense on how to do that. If you're like, okay, I can't knock this guy out, or maybe I can't submit him like I want to, but I can stall him out all 3 rounds and just rack up the points. Whereas I think Azatar is going to be like, no, I got to knock him out. And that's where his mind's going to be at. I don't think he's going to be thinking about judges and scorecards and things like that. Whereas Frevola, if he's smart, he's going to be thinking, all right, probably not going to see a submission here, so I'm going to have to rely on the cards if there's any chance of victory for me here.
Yep. What are your predictions for the Sam?
Well, the UFC, they made an investment in Ottman Azatar. He's only fought one other time in the UFC. I think that we need to keep that in mind. He's 10-0. 13-0 with 10 KOs. And I mean, yeah, he's got really heavy hands, German guy, but he's going up against a vet. And, Matt Frevola has been here since 2014. He's a Sarah Longo fighter. He's got really good striking, or not really good striking, but he can throw. If you go back to his fight with Lando Venata, a name maybe you guys are familiar with, he went to war with Tony Ferguson and hung in there with Tony. Lando's he's a good fighter that never really got past mid-card, but he's 8-1-1. I'm going to go with Frevola on this. I'm going to go with experience. Only his second fight in the UFC under the big lights. He definitely has the potential to knock out Frevola, but I think experience is going to get this one. He's going to get him on the ground. He's going to have his way with him.
Yeah, this was kind of a tough one for me because, like you said, Zatar, to me, he's a knockout artist. He has, in the 13 fights, I believe it is, he has 12 finishes, 10 by knockout, and then I think the other 2 were by submission. So he has that experience getting guys out before you get to the decision. Whereas Frevola, sneaky thing about him is he has a wrestling background. You wouldn't know it because he doesn't use it as he should. He kind of likes to stand up with the other guy, like Miles said. It's kind of like a bad omen for him. He feels like he needs to stand up and then compete with the guy on the ground when he should be taking the fight to the ground because he has a wrestling background that he has really well. And I feel like for him to win this fight, because if he tries to just stand up and trade with Azatar,
see, it's hard. It's hard, right? It's a weird ass name.
If he's going to try to stand up with Azatar, he's going to lose because of his striking. He has really good striking, and when he hits you, it hurts. He packs a pound in his hand. But for him to win, he's going to have to take him down. But when he does that, usually he tries to do that too much, or he tries to put too much into his striking, and he tires himself out. But he has to change things up. He has to try and take him down in the beginning, control the fight on the ground, use the ground to his advantage. Because once you take Azatar to the ground, all of Azatar's advantages go away because he can't strike you on the ground. He can hit you, but he can't get that clear fist-to-face action against him because he's on the ground trying to get back up because he doesn't want to be down there. Whereas Favola would benefit from being on the ground where he can move around. He can hit him from there and not worry about that knockout shot because he's already on the ground. I see this either as a first-round knockout by Azatar if he catches him while he's trying to take him down, or Favola tries to just stand up and trade shots with him. I see it as a first-round knockout, but I could also see this as a decision victory for Favola if he goes and uses the wrestling game, gets him down, and avoids the shots. I think it's still going to be close because I still think Azatar is going to be able to hit him. It's just whether or not Favola can go in with the right game plan or not. But for me, personally, I think it's going to be a first-round knockout by Azatar. And it's trying to say that like 5 times, and it's like hard.
Yep.
It's hard. But I feel like he's going to come in and have the right game plan to stand up and strike. Whereas Favola might be hit or miss with his game plan. He might come in and be like, I'm going to take him down, but then he's going to be like, oh, I want to man up and stand up and strike with him because I don't want to take away from this fight. That's just what it seems like he is because he floats around where he's at all the time. He needs to focus. He needs to take him down or he's going to get taken down. Either way, this fight's going to go to the ground. Whether he gets put to the ground or he tries to take Azatar to the ground. So I have this as a first-round knockout for Ottman. But to move on to the third fight of the card, we got the women's flyweight division, and it's Jessica Ayre against Joanne Cattlewood. What are your predictions, Sam?
Well, you got number 7 and number 8. Joanne coming in ranked number 8, Jessica at number 7. Jessica I has a real problem making weight. Her last fight with Cynthia Calvillo, she missed weight, lost 30% of her purse. She's a decent striker. She does a lot of dirty boxing. She throws decent kicks, good punches. Not a lot of knockouts on her record, though. I think it's only 3. She's a good fighter, but I love JoJo, man. I love Joanne Calderwood. It broke my heart, the last loss to Jennifer Maia. She was set for the title shot, and she took the fight because she wanted to stay active. And she lost. First round armbar, I think. Was it first? Yeah, it was first round armbar. I'm going to go with Joanne. Her Muay Thai, I mean, her striking's on another level. She was a Muay Thai fighter before she was ever in the UFC. She's good. She's got good striking. And like Shevchenko showed us, Jessica I is open to being struck. She leaves herself open. Her offense leaves her open to be hit. So I'm going to go with JoJo on this one. I just think she's another level over Jessica I. Jessica I is good. Like I said, at the dirty box. She's not much on the ground. She's a dirty, gritty, grinding fighter. But Joanna Calderwood's on her way back to that title shot. She technically would have already had the title shot had she not took that shot. And I think she's going to learn from the mistakes that she made against Jennifer Maia, but she did make, she didn't look like she was in that fight. I don't know if she was jet lag. I don't know what. That wasn't the usual Joanne Calderwood that we usually see. But I think you're going to see JoJo performing on a top-notch level, and I see JoJo getting this by knockout, maybe second round.
Okay. What about you, Miles?
It's interesting when you look at their career wins. We basically have 2 primarily decision fighters. Like they do have a different flavor on how they fight, but the results are ultimately that the vast majority of both of their wins come by decision. Now, usually with decision fighters, that typically means they have excellent control over the situation, right? Like regardless if we're talking about striking or wrestling, that transition to the ground, dealing with the ground, they have good general control. But decision fighters generally don't have a very good finishing potential. Like they're not the ones to throw the knockout punch or hit that submission. So this will be interesting because essentially we're going to have two fighters with similar strategies, slightly different flavor, but they're going to be both trying to enact the same game plan, basically. So we're going to see who's better at it. So on one end, I do agree that I think Jessica Ai is outclassed. I couldn't find any of her actual rankings, but just based on the gym that she fights out of, she trains Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, some Muay Thai or kickboxing, and some wrestling. And while I'm not sure of her personal rankings, the coaches out of her gym are amazing. You've got guys in there like multiple time world champions in their discipline. Guys have been in for like 40 years or something crazy like that. Like she's got some very knowledgeable teachers at her disposal for sure. Now, the other thing I think is interesting is she was taken off the card in October when she was supposed to fight Jessica Adirondé. I think is how you say that. It sounds like Brazilian. Adron. Oh yeah, I wasn't gonna get that.
Andrade.
There's no way. But I think that was due to injuries. So I'm wondering if that might still be an issue. It was October, so she should have had enough time to heal. But some injuries, they persist. And sometimes it's not necessarily like you feel the pain, but you lose mobility, you lose elasticity in your muscles. There could be any number of ways an injury can persist over the years and affect your game. So I'd be interested to see if that does become a factor in this fight. As far as her fighting style, she's got good head movement, good overall movement. She kind of looks a little bit more like a boxer than a kickboxer, the way she kind of does the bobbing and the weaving. She maintains the center ring control fairly well. That seems to be one of her calling cards. As soon as she comes out, she wants to be right in the middle of the ring, and then everybody else has to just problem solve around her, which that's usually a decision victory fighter move. That's how you maintain control in the octagon, is if you're in the center, you can just kind of turn, and at no point are you going to be like trying to problem solve, or you're running out of room, or the cage is all of a sudden coming up on you. If you're in the center, you're in the driver's seat. Now here's where we got to look at the difference in striking. And I brought this up earlier, and this is where I expand on what I was saying about technical proficiency is a balancing act between offense and defense at any given point in time. And these two fighters, I think, are a pretty good example of that. So when you look at Jessica Ai, she's got great hand speed, and she's got a decent amount of striking power. But the problem is it comes at the expense of her guard. As soon as those hands start moving, the guard like falls apart completely. Now, when you look at striking through the lens of is it technically proficient, what you're essentially looking for is whenever you throw a strike, it creates an opening. Because if you have two hands to defend punches, it's like, all right, this hand is in charge of this quadrant, both high and low, and this quadrant is defended by this hand, high and low. So if I have to strike, that means one of my quadrants has nothing there. There are openings for me to be hit, both high and low, because I can't use my elbow, I can't parry, I can't do anything because my hand is already left the guard position. So a technically proficient striker, what we mean by that usually means how good are you at maintaining this overall defense when one of those hands leaves the equation, right? Like, is it like when you throw a strike, does this hand drop? Now you've got basically just the bottom quadrant and the other three are just completely open for being struck? Or are you nice and tight and can you potentially cover and make up for the fact that one of these hands is occupied? That's not something Jessica Ai is good at, because as soon as she starts throwing, both hands enter the equation very quickly, and there's openings everywhere. Especially when she starts firing off rapid fire strikes, it's basically just both hands out in front of her. So as far as her grappling is concerned, she's got good problem solving skills. She's got good defensive skills on the ground. She hasn't shown a great deal of potential for finishing ability in terms of like submissions. What else I got here? Oh, she has a good. That's a typo. It says good night. That's not. There's no way that's what I meant to type there. But when she has a good day in the ring, she's definitely a force to be reckoned with. Like when we look back at the Leslie Smith fight versus the Chukagan fight, it was like two different fighters between those two fights. So if she comes in as Jessica Ai from the Leslie Smith fight, she's got some potential to win this thing. But if we're going to see the Leslie Ai from the Chukagan fight, that's no. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot out of that. Now, on the other hand, you got Calderwood. Definitely outclasses her in terms of credentials. She's got more. I think she's probably got more experience in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but she definitely has more experience in Muay Thai. She had a decent career both in Muay Thai A and KB leagues before she ever got into the UFC. But her striking is it's not like the most perfect striking ever, but it is more technically proficient. When she throws a strike, she keeps her guard fairly well maintained. It's not like she throws both hands out there and it all kind of falls apart. But she also has the Muay Thai striking power. And so I think that's gonna show through in terms of when Jessica Ai tries to throw these flurries of punches, she's going to be coming up against more resistance because the guard is more complete on Calderwood's side. And then when she has to receive those punches and kicks, they're going to be heavier just based on the training she's had and the experience she's had. But she has the same sort of forward pressure in her stand-up game, and Calderwood also likes to maintain center position in the octagon. So it'll be interesting to see who kind of gets that position between the two of them, since they'll probably be fighting over it. As far as groundwork goes, decent ability work from the ground. Again, not a whole lot of demonstration of finishing potential, just because she doesn't have a lot of submission victories. I think she'd probably do it though. Overall, I would say decision could go either way because that's kind of the forte of both of these fighters. But statistically, Calderwood lands more significant strikes more often and has higher takedown average and takedown accuracy. So in terms of racking up points, those are kind of important categories. So I'd say the decision would go to Calderwood if it gets there, which is pretty likely in this one. There's also potential for knockout. I see Calderwood getting the knockout as well if it goes that way. I'd say it's less likely than the decision, but it's there. She's going to have a harder time again if we see the Jessica Ai who is in the Leslie Smith fight. Then it's a toss up. But I don't think that's who we're going to see. And then of course submission victory. I would say Jessica Ai is more likely to get it. Just based on what I've seen, she does try for submissions. The difference between her and Calderwood in terms of how they approach their ground game, Calderwood doesn't spend a lot of time making attempts at submissions. She more just problem solves and try to get herself out of bad situations and strikes from the ground, from her back or on top ground and pound, but she doesn't make a lot of attempts, and you can't submit someone if you don't even try. So just based on that, if there's a submission, which there probably won't be, it would be Jessica Ai.
Mm-hmm. And for me, we got Jessica Ai. She specializes in wrestling and ground and pound, and then Kattar specializes in boxing and stand-up. I think that for me, this is just pretty self-explanatory. It feels like this is except for the main event, this is kind of like the theme of the night. It's wrestling against boxing or striking. I feel like Kattar has the advantage with the striking by a lot. You would think Jessica Ai would want to take this to the ground, like you said, with how she is with her striking, and then when she strikes, she doesn't know how to roll with it, and then make sure that she's ready when she does it. I feel like, just off the top of my head, Calderwood by second round knockout, or I think she can dominate this fight with her striking and then win by decision. I feel like Jessica Ai is gonna get hit a few times, and then her defense mechanism is going to be to grab Calderwood and try and take her down. She could do it here and there, but I feel like she's not going to get into her game because she's going to go too much into defense mode by getting hit, because she's going to want to stand up first and try and engage with Catterwood like she has done lately, and it's not going to end well. And then she's going to just grab on and try and pull her down, to which she does well. She does good with that, but it's not going to work when you're fighting a striker. You're going to want to get them down before they hit you first, because if you're not that well with striking, they're gonna have their way with you. They know how to work things standing up, whereas you know how to work things when you get down. And I think she's gonna struggle with it. And I'm gonna have Catterwood by second round knockout, and then she's gonna move on. I feel like she's gonna be able to take this momentum, and because she's been on like I wouldn't say a downward spiral, but she's won, I think, one of the last 2 fights. She should have had a shot, and then she took a fight just because she didn't want to wait, which I hate, because like you get stuck in that limbo of, do you wait for that title fight that you are guaranteed, or do you take a fight because you know you want to stay fresh? Because when you're on a good, like a hot streak, like she was at the time, you want to keep it. But because she took a fight on short notice and then didn't really prepare as much as she usually does, she lost. And then it was kind of like just a downward spiral. She didn't know how to recover from it. And I feel like she can recover from it in this fight against Jessica Eye. But to move on to the co-main event, which I know Sam is excited for, we got the lightweight division. We got Dan Hooker against newcomer Michael Chandler coming in from Bellator. I'm going to start with you first, Miles, because I know Sam has quite a bit to say about this.
I do too. So as I was doing the research for this one, I talked myself into, okay, I think I got a fair idea of who I'm voting for here. And as I talk myself through this, let's see if I arrive at the same conclusion. Because the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh, but wait a minute. so here's kind of where my head was at when I was doing the research. And let's see if I arrive at the same conclusion, because I might change my mind. This is a pretty close fight. There's a lot here to unpack. On one hand, you got Dan Hooker. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt, sorry, not a black belt. But he is a very seasoned kickboxer. He's a 2-time KB champion. So, I mean, he's definitely knows what he's doing with his hands. Now, both fighters have good movement, a good sense of gauging, which, of course, comes with a lot of experience in striking. They both have good forward pressure. They tend to keep whoever they're fighting kind of on their heels, pushing forward to, really – particularly with these two guys, they have a similar approach where they're able to close distance very quickly. They shoot in there right quick. One of the differences with what Hooker does, though, is that front hand. That front hand is a tool for him. He uses it to essentially create openings. He'll throw little jabs here and there. He'll go, oh, okay, come up here, move your hands where I want them. And then once he sees like a good sort of setup, that's when he shoots in with that rear hand, and he starts throwing those crosses to the body and really inflicting some damage. Obviously, he's got strong kicks and knees. Everybody's afraid of his knees. So, yes, his lower body attacks are pretty significant. And he has a good sense of timing on when to land those kicks, especially when we look at his clinch game, how he integrates knees into a clinch game. Very effective. Now, the other thing I think is going to be a big issue here is he's got great impact resistance and hit recovery. We really saw that with the Dustin Poirier fight, the way those guys were just slugging the crap out of each other. It was like watching Rocky and Ivan Drago just go back and forth for like 20 minutes. And then like Ivan Drago's in the corner and his coach is like, why haven't you knocked him out? He's like, this man, he's like a piece of iron. It's kind of like that. Except I guess in that situation, Poirier was Rocky and Hooker was Ivan Drago, which, hey, that's not a terrible fighter to be compared against. No. He's Ivan Drago.
No, not at all.
He also has such a long reach for his weight division. It basically forces fighters who are normally very technical in their striking, they have to overreach just to be able to reach him. Like he could just kind of put his arm out and they're like, well, I have to just like kind of leap in a little bit if I want to get to your head, if I want to get to your ribs, just because there's a big giant stilt arm in my way. That's what we saw with the Poirier fight. Normally, he's a lot more kind of close in with his guard, and he doesn't overextend too much, but he had to. He didn't really have a choice when he was fighting Hooker just because of that arm reach was so significant. And going into this next fight, he's also got the arm reach advantage. He's got a 4-inch reach advantage on Michael Chandler. I can't believe I forgot the name. That was bad, but he does have that same reach advantage in his favor. Sometimes he goes in before his hands are back into a good guarded position, especially when he uses that strategy of closing distance very quickly to, start inflicting damage when he sees an opening. That has a tendency to sometimes he gets caught with punches he wasn't necessarily expecting, but he has good hit recovery. So it doesn't, mess him up too much. He kind of just gets right back into what he was doing. You got to hit him a lot of times to knock him out. So I'm not too worried about him like accidentally running into a knockout punch. That's not really in the cards in this one. His wrestling and takedown defense are excellent. It allows him to take good positioning, especially after he defends a takedown. So he's not so much a I'm going to take you down into guard position and work. He's more of like, I'm going to let you try to take me down. I'm going to defend, and then I'm going to get good position based on just wherever we end up. And he might not even necessarily be going for, looking for those submissions. He might be just looking to wear you out, take a break for a second, catch his breath, or even just throw those big, heavy strikes when you can't go anywhere. You can't create the distance to get away from him. When he's on the ground, he's got great submission defense. He tends to maintain those high pressure top positions, and again, just land those big heavy strikes when you can't do a whole lot to stop him. And he doesn't spend a whole lot of time looking for submissions. But he is excellent at transitioning from guard to guard, which allows him to keep these top positions even when people are trying to transition out and defend. He just kind of stays on top of them. Now, I don't think that's necessarily going to be as easy for him in this one because Michael Chandler is an NAACP Division I wrestler with 100 career wins under his belt. So trying to dominate that guy and be like, nah, I'm going to hold you on the ground and not let you do stuff. That's not the guy who's going to be like, oh man, I don't know what to do now. That's all wrestling is. And he's pretty damn good at it. He's got some KB background and a little bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in there, obviously. And of course, he dominated Bellator, 3-time lightweight heavy champion with all of the records, most submission victories, most wins in the light division history, most stoppage wins in Bellator history, most title reigns in Bellator history. So he did all the things. People were like, why are you winning so hard? Can you go to the UFC and just leave some winning for the rest of us? So now he's here. In terms of his fighting, like I said, they have a very kind of similar strengths in stand-up. He can also do that kind of shooting in, closing distance really well, but he's got a bit of a different flavor for it. He doesn't use the front hand in the same way that Hooker does. His is a little bit more based on timing, right? So he'll shoot in once he sees an opportunity after a bad jab or a failed cross or something. That's when he'll really kind of make you pay for it. And people just don't even see it coming sometimes. Sometimes they'll just be kind of, a couple of feet apart and they're like, all right, I'm making my game plan. And all of a sudden you just get hit in the face. Like, oh shit, what happened? Because so he's very quick on his feet. In terms of reach, he's not going to enjoy the reach advantage he usually has. In his division in Bellator, he did tend to have the reach advantage in most of his fights. Some fights, it was a little bit more even, but he was kind of a big dude for his division in Bellator. That's not really true anymore since he's going up against Dan Hooker. So I'm interested to see what it's going to look like when he doesn't have the advantage. He's on the receiving end of that, right? He does have a tendency to put himself out of position when he goes for these heavy hits, but he has lightning fast recovery, excellent footwork, and he just moves right back into where he needs to be. Even if he throws something crazy, I saw him do a spinning back fist that missed. He just went right back into guard, and the guy didn't even have time to I'm going to hit him. Oh, nope, he's right back where he was a second ago. He's a very technical power striker, but he does tend to get overwhelmed by big shots. Like if there's a big roundhouse kick low, he'll particularly use like two hands to stop it, but you'll actually see it displaces him. His whole positioning just kind of gets moved back versus Dan Hooker, who's like a moose, will just take the kick. He'll defend it, but it's not going to like move him anywhere. He's gonna be like, oh, that was cute. Like, so I think that's going to be a factor for him here. Obviously, he's got excellent wrestling, excellent takedown ability, excellent clinch control. He's probably got a little bit lower impact resistance than Hooker, but probably about the same level of hit recovery. That's not saying Michael Chandler can't take a punch. He's got a chin on him. His groundwork blends really well with his wrestling. And that's kind of the biggest difference. Well, the biggest difference between him and Hooker is that it looks more like Chandler actively looks for submission attempts while he's on the ground. So he has sort of this like very dominant presence when he has his ground game because of his wrestling. But the difference is he's not just there to ground and pound. He's actually looking for those opportunities to slip in those nasty secret or those slick submissions that they don't see coming. Also has great submission defense. Now, in terms of how this is going to go down, a KO or a TKO could go either way. But I would say Hooker has a slight advantage because, again, he has that just a little bit more of impact resistance. So over the length of the fight, you've got Michael Chandler and Dan Hooker who can essentially put out the same amount of power. So they're hitting each other about as hard. But the guy who could take more of the punches and not be affected by it, over the long term, I think he's just going to hold up better. Whereas Michael Chandler, he can take those punches, but I think it's going to add up. I think it's going to wear on him. So if there is potential for a knockout or a TKO, I think Michael Chandler would be the guy to wear out first. Submission, again, could go either way if there's a submission victory here. But Chandler, again, he actively looks for those submissions, whereas Hooker just kind of, if he finds one, he's like, oh, that's convenient. But Chandler's like looking to try to trip you up. He does a lot more work when it comes to submissions. So I would say just on that basis alone, also adding in his wrestling experience and the way he blends it with his jiu-jitsu, I think it's more doable to see a Chandler submission victory if there's going to be one. And if this goes to decision, I would give it to Chandler just based on the stats. Now, of those three potentials, knockout, submission, or decision, I would say the most likely one would probably be the knockout that I'm, again, giving to Dan Hooker, just because while these guys are both pretty good grapplers, they do have a tendency to want to stand and trade. Like Michael Chandler, great wrestler, probably should use it more. Like he's a good striker, and I think he really like enjoys it. I think he likes standing and trading with dudes because he knows he's pretty good at it. But I don't think he's better than Dan Hooker. That's going to be the problem. So unless he, takes that into account and says, look, I'm stronger when I'm grappling and when I'm doing my submission work, I don't think he's got what it takes to break down Dan Hooker, the Ivan Drago guy, right? So I think if that's where his mind is at, and he doesn't do the thing he needs to do, then yes, Dan Hooker would be the one to get the KO or the TKO. And of course, if he doesn't utilize the grappling enough, that could also result in a decision victory if it goes the distance.
We got Nicholas Graham chiming in. I think Chandler is starting to show his age, honestly.
I mean, he's getting up there, isn't he? He's not like old, but yeah, like 36.
Yeah.
I mean, most fighters their peak is between 28 and like 32. I mean, yeah. 36, you start to consider retiring.
Yeah. But with this, I got Hooker. He's a top kickboxer. He has top kickboxing skills with the ability to set up combinations on the go. And then you got Chandler, world-class wrestler with well-rounded stand-up game. This could go both ways, depending on where they go. I saw a lot in that Poirier fight in a loss than I saw in his past fights. The way he can just set up his hits, kind of like Max Holloway. He's just in your face. He's going for the contact. He goes high, he goes low, he goes in the middle. It doesn't matter. He uses his hands with the striking, but then he's very good with his kicks. Like those kicks were really like a lethal weapon against Dustin Poirier.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas Chandler, he's kind of like in the zone with his wrestling. Like in his losses, he's been hit because he didn't go with the wrestling game. But I thought in his last fight against Benson Henderson, what he used very well was he would act like he's going for a takedown, and then Benson Henderson would go to block it, and then he would just hit him. He would just get him with the fakes, or when he would go for a punch, he'd fake the punch and then go for a takedown. He'd get in his head to where he's going to make his opponent think one thing, and then he does another. And then when he stands up, he's not that bad standing up. He's not on the level of Dan Hooker with like combinations and his power, but he holds his own when he's standing up. He did knock out Benson Henderson. Granted, Benson Henderson's on the way down, but he's a similar fighter to Dan Hooker, where he uses those legs. He stands up. He goes for the shots. But Michael Chandler has that experience. Granted, it's in Bellator, but he has that big fight experience where Dan Hooker got a glimpse of that against Dustin Poirier in a loss. It was a close loss, but it's still a experience they can grow from. And when I think of this fight, I feel like Chandler's going to go for the takedowns. He's going to use the fakes to try and benefit him, because if he tries to stand up in this fight, he's going to get beat because he's going to take too much damage at all levels, because I think Hooker's going to start out with a lot of leg kicks. He's going to try and bruise the legs of Chandler so the takedowns are eliminated. He's going to try and eliminate them by weakening his legs from being able to move as fast as he usually can. And then he's going to just use that to his advantage, keep the stand up, and then get that knockout. But if Chandler can go out from the beginning, get the takedown, and kind of wear out Hooker on the ground, he has a better shot at getting like a decision victory, because I don't think he's going to knock out Hooker, because Hooker, if you saw that fight against Poirier, he has a chin on him. He was taking, both fighters were taking loads and loads of damage, and then they just kept on going. Chandler's best chance is to get him on the ground and either try and submit him, because he has a well-rounded game at all aspects. It's just that he's very dominant with his wrestling. That's his bread and butter. He just doesn't use it all the time, because I guess in Bellator you don't need to, because some of the fighters are on the level of UFC. But he has fought UFC caliber fighters, just like in Benson Henderson. He was a lightweight champion in WEC and UFC, so he does have that experience. He fought him, who has fought guys in that division and has had success against them. But he needs to know that his top priority is to get Dan Hooker down and to do the ground and pound, because if he can do that, he'll have like a really good shot at winning by decision, or probably by knockout on the ground, because when he does that, he has a high success rate on the ground. But when he stands up with a guy that is beneficial at standing up with the boxing or kickboxing, it's not going to work out well, because he's eliminating half of his game right there, because because you're eliminating the ground game and then you're just going with the stand up. And you, as like a half and half stand up artist compared to a seasoned stand up artist, it's not going to go well unless you get lucky where he gets slipped. So I either have this as like a second round knockout by Dan Hooker, or I got Michael Chandler by decision. It all depends on what route Chandler goes with his game plan, whether he tries to stand up like a man with, as you would say, with Hooker, or if he goes with his game plan of wrestling and getting the early takedowns and using that to his advantage. Because some people want to see the fireworks, but when your advantage and when your bread and butter is wrestling, you got to go with that, because he can use that, take him down, wear him out, and then when Hooker comes up, he'll be kind of tired. He can then stand up with him then, because he had made Hooker waste some energy trying to get back up from guard and to get back up to stand up to his bread and butter, that he would waste energy doing that. Because whenever you get a guy down and then you apply your pressure on them to spell energy, that should be his number one priority in this fight. To wear out Hooker in the beginning, and then you can engage with them on the stand up, because then he won't have that full adrenaline going. He'll be kind of tired from defending the takedowns and then getting back up. So I like I said, I either have this as a first round knockout by Hooker or a third round decision victory by Chandler. But all in all, to me, this is going to be the fight of the night for me. I think this is going to be the best one, because I like the matchup. I like the unknown of Chandler coming into the UFC and then just being slotted right there in the top 10, because he should be there because of how dominant he was in Bellator. But it's a safe thing as well, to where he's not getting that initial title shot. Like he's kind of earning it because Hooker, I think, is ranked number 5 right now. So he's getting that top 5 matchup, but he's not like, boom, he's not fighting Khabib, he's not fighting Olivier, he's not fighting Gagey or Poirier or McGregor. He's getting Hooker, who hasn't fought since I think he fought Poirier in April. I think it was. So it was March or April, and so he's had time to recover from the beating he took from Poirier. And then Chandler, I forget when he fought. It was a few months. I think it was around the same time, because he fought in the Mohegan Sun. But he was able to get a quick victory in 2 minutes over Benson. So he didn't take too much damage. So he's kind of fresh. They had him up there as an alternate for the Khabib Gage fight, and so he's been ready. He's been training. He's ready to go. You got Hooker ready to go. I'm excited for it, but like I said, I got those 2 outcomes ready to go. And then you got Nicholas chiming in. He's 34, so which isn't too bad. If you think about it, before 5 years ago, when you saw all these young athletes coming up in the UFC, where they're coming up at age 21, age 24, 25. You got that one female, I think, flyweight that's 17 or 18 that debuted over the summer. All of the fighters were in their 30s. They're a little seasoned. They're a little later in life, and then that's the business now. Like, you get a little seasoned, then you're ready to go, because you got all that experience from training and doing all that. So all the guys that are coming out that are ready in the main event, they're in their 30s or whatnot. But now you get to the point where it's like the new UFC, where you've seen all these younger guys come from different backgrounds. Like John Jones came from wrestling. You got this guy coming from actual professional wrestling, or you got these kickboxers and this and that. They're starting out early. They're getting an early advantage on, because they know that they can use the endurance of being younger, while they're actually training some of their other backgrounds. They know they can go the full distance, and they can just go balls to the wall, because by the time they get to that peak point at 30, 32, they'll have developed another thing, another style to go with it, to where they can start molding their style differently, to where they don't have to worry about just using their athleticism. They can actually be more contained, more mature, and have like a better style fighter, because once you get older, you won't be able to last as much longer. Just look at Cormier. He can't go 5 minutes. Like, he could get tired, but he was, in a lot of his fights, he was able to dictate the fight with his wrestling, and that's how he lasted so much longer in his fights. He was smart, used his wrestling, and didn't spell too much energy, because he was the one controlling the fight. because he got older and he realized that's what he needed to do. And then that's why you saw him go from heavyweight to light heavyweight. But then as he got older, he decided to go back up to heavyweight because he didn't have to do all the wrestling. He was a small guy. He could wrestle, but when he went back up, he regained that power punch and he was able to knock guys out sooner. So he kind of did a trade-off. He was like, I'm a little bit younger. Let me use the ground game because I'm not being able to hit these big guys right now that are younger. But now, then he grew older and he was like, these guys are catching up to me. I got John Jones here who has that background, but he's taller and lankier, which is like a bad matchup for me. So then he decided, I got to move up, back up to heavyweight to regain that knockout power because these guys at heavyweight are now getting older, or I'm able to match up with them because I'm starting to get bigger and there's not that many takedown guys in heavyweight that there used to be with like the Brock Lesnar's or whatnot. I can dominate this with doing a little bit of ground game and then the knockout because I can do that. But once he got to the age 40, he kind of lost a little bit of that because of Stipe. He fought Stipe and he was the more conditioned guy that could knock him out and not get as tired. I see that with Chandler being 32. He's more polished. I could see him being able to use all that he's learned in Bellator and then take that to UFC and then use that ground game to his advantage. Kind of like what, it's not the same, not comparing him, but Khabib. Khabib uses that ground game, but he pushes the action. He pushes the fighter back to where he can put him in a situation where he could get that takedown. The guy's, he's pushing the fight, the guy's on his back legs, and then you take him down. I've seen Chandler do that a couple times. He's not on that level, but on days he does it, but he uses more of the head fake, like he's going to punch, like I said, and then he does it. So I see it going both ways, but that's where I'm leaning towards. I'm leaning towards Michael Chandler by decision. But now we're moving on to the main event.
I still got to do my Chandler pick there.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't be long because it won't take long. I like to call Michael Chandler the best of the B- fighters. Miles, you said that he set a lot of records. Well, he did set a lot of records in a place where a lot of people aren't setting records. He's, when you come to the UFC, and look, I'm a huge Ben Askren guy. Love Ben Askren. But the proof was in the pudding, man. When you come to the UFC, you are fighting the best. And you could take a guy like Dan Hooker to go to Bellator, and he would rule supreme over there. He's just a level. They're a level different, man. It's like going from college ball to NFL. It's a whole nother ball game. With Hooker's range, his feints are what's going to be key in this fight. I firmly believe the feints are going to, Hooker's going to take the bait. He's going to catch knees. The only way possible he wins this fight is if he takes him down and lays and prays. If he stays on top of him, he doesn't have that great of a submission game. Now, I will say his wrestling is outstanding. Hooker does not want to wrestle with him. Hooker is also hard to keep down. Not a lot of guys have kept Dan Hooker down. So I'm going with Hooker by knockout. Chandler he's shown that his chin, he's losing it with his chin. He doesn't have it like he used to. And I think Hooker's going to knock him out. Probably third round, maybe fourth. It won't go to 5. And I think Chandler was. I think this was pretty much Dana's ego wanting to flex on Bellator. He could have picked 3 other lightweights that were better than Michael Chandler to come to the UFC. I don't know what is. Oh, we can't hear you, Miles.
My bad. I muted my mic because I was sneezing. My bad. No, I feel like this is a Dana White wants to make money kind of move. Like
Yeah.
That's to like kind of coast on the reputation that Michael Chandler's built in Bellator and be like, we can make a lot of money. Not like, Connor McGregor money, but we can make some money because we're going to
People
be
will
pulling
watch.
people from
Yeah.
the Bellator camp and people from the UFC camp. We can get all of their money. It'll be great. So,
But let's
I'm
not
going-
forget. Let's not forget though that Dan Hooker, you saw in that Poirier fight that he doesn't really try and block punches. He just takes them.
Same with the Felder fight.
Yeah.
People forget that fight.
He
He took a lot of punishment in that fight too.
Yeah. So, in essence, to me, the reason I go towards Chandler is because he doesn't have to engage that much. He could take him down, get up, and then engage, but he knows that Hooker's not going to block it. So even if it doesn't knock him down or whatnot, he's going to take damage. And when he takes damage, he's going to be prone to being taken down again because he's taking all that punishment because he's not trying to defend it. And I think that will kind of work against Hooker in this fight because he didn't have to worry about getting taken down by Poirier because Poirier was going to stand up and fight with him. But when you got a guy that can stand up, he's not to that level, but he can hit you, but he can take you down. And then when you get back up, say you're 100% and then he takes you down. When Chandler takes you down, it's going to take about 10, 20% out of your gas tank because you're going to try and get back up. And when you get back up, you're not blocking. So right off the bat, if Chandler does it right away and it succeeds, you're at 80% already, and then you're going to stand up with them, and you're going to not block him. You're going to be like, "Come here, hit me," and then you're going to hit him back. But he's going to be at 100% per se, and you're going to be at 80%.
But I can't see Chandler hanging on with him like that, though. Chandler's not going to stay in there like Poirier would or like Felder would.
Oh, there's no way.
The difference between Chandler and Askren is Askren fought in one where he dominated that, but what fighters do you know there compared to Bellator, where you got some of the fighters that used to be in UFC? So you have that taste of UFC there, especially Benson Henderson.
But how did he do against those fighters?
He's a 3-time champ.
Against who?
He beat Benson Henderson twice, who was a former lightweight champion. He was
in the UFC.
Yeah, he was in the UFC. And then he beat him twice.
I'm just saying Chandler to me, and the same with Askren, but let's keep in mind when Askren fought in one, there was no drug testing over there. So he's fighting roided up freaks and out wrestling them. But, I just don't think, like I said, I'm going with Hooker and Miles, what are the betting odds on that fight? Do you know?
I don't actually know. But I agree with you.
I think Hooker is a -110 and then Chandler's +110. So they have it as like a kind of, they give Hooker the favorites odds, probably because he's in the UFC and the Chandler's debuting.
Probably because he's going to win.
But for me, I feel like that's a good sign that if Chandler hasn't fought in the UFC before, but he's getting that close of an odds, it makes you feel like that they're leaning towards Chandler in this. Because
Dana's praying Chandler wins. If not, he just wasted a whole lot of money.
Yeah, but then on another level, this fight is only going 3 rounds, not 5 rounds, because it's not a championship fight. So that, in essence,
which
to me,
favors Hooker.
I think that favors Chandler because he can just use the wrestling game, take him down, wear him out, and do the ground and pound. Because
if he lays and prays, he has a chance. But I don't think he's
not the lay and pray type though. Like when he takes you down, he's going and he's trying to either submit you or he's trying to ground and pound you. He's constantly moving, and then he'll let you back up. He let Benson back up, and then he went to fake the takedown, and then he knocked out Benson Henderson with a shot. Granted, Benson's not Hooker, but at the same time, Hooker doesn't have that big time experience yet. He just had his big time fight. He fought Poirier and he lost. Whereas Chandler was a mainstay of the Bellator and he won the belt 3 times. So he has that experience of fighting the big fight fights over there compared to Hooker, who just had his first one. He literally just had his first one, and he lost by a decision. That's why I favor him. But I do think that if Chandler gets away from his game plan and he decides at the very beginning, I'm just going to stand up with him and go away from the ground game, wrestling game, that's going to be a bad move for him, because then it's going to take his advantage out of the game plan. And then that game plan goes, advantage-wise, goes to Hooker. But I think that Chandler knows that he needs to do the wrestling ground game. He knows it. And I think that's why Dana White has him fighting Hooker as the first fight, because the matchup works well for him, but also tests him at the same time.
They're going to have a nice spot for Chandler after this fight. Every company needs a stepping stone fighter, a gatekeeper to maybe break into the top 10. Or, another tomato can.
So when Dan Hooker loses, he can be that stepping stone guy.
Well, let me
if Dan
consolidate
Hooker loses this fight, I'll never show my face.
Yeah. Let me consolidate down some of these ideas, because I think you both made valid points, but I see some issues with what you're thinking, D-Bake. First, when we talk about what fighters could do versus what they actually do, there's a big difference. Like when you're a coach, you've got a few hats, you've got a few jobs you have to fill. One of them, obviously, you get, train your fighters and you say, oh, this is the guy we're up against. Here's our game plan. But the other very important job of a coach is in the fight. You got to hold your fighter accountable and keep him on the game plan, because I think what's going to happen is Michael Chandler's going to get there, and then he's going to start fighting Dan Hooker, and he's going to get hit real hard, and his fifis are going to get hurt. And then he's like, well, now I have to knock him out. Like, he's going to get invested in doing a stand-up, because that's what happens. When someone hits you real hard, you're like, well, now I want to hit you real hard. And so his coach is going to be like, nope, you gotta do the wrestling with him. And he's like, I don't want to. And at the end of the day, it's going to be Michael Chandler stepping into the ring, not his coach, who's laid out the game plan and knows what he's got to do. It's going to be Chandler who's got to fight the fight. And so I just don't think in the moment he's going to be like, I don't think that's going to be how he wants to enter the UFC, is by laying on a guy for 20 minutes and then getting a decision victory. I think in his head, he wants to get the knockout.
Come in with a bang, man.
Yeah, he wants to get that attention, and that's going to work against him. And in terms of his wrestling, when he goes to the ground, you're right, he does work, but I think the issue is that he's just not going to think to do it. I mean, it might happen just because, Hooker is no stranger to wrestling. We saw him wrestle with Poirier, and on paper, Poirier is probably a way better grappler, definitely on the ground, but probably even in wrestling. Whereas Hooker's strength is in his striking, but he's just such a big dude and he's got all that reach. It's kind of hard to deal with him on the ground. Now, Michael Chandler could do it, but I don't think he's gonna. So, I mean, when we talk about what he could do, I mean, he could do a lot of things. He could realistically suplex him, and it would be amazing. Yeah. I don't think he's gonna. I think he's gonna try to stand and trade with this guy, and it's not gonna work out well for him. And his coach is gonna be in the corner like, get on top of him. And then Michael Chandler's just gonna not have any of that.
I'm just going by what he did last fight. That in his last fight, and what he did was he did go with the ground game, but then he went and stood up after. Used that to his advantage, and he knocked Benson out. So, but
he's not fighting Benson Henderson. He's fighting Dan Hooker.
Yeah, but to me, I don't see a big difference between Benson Henderson and Dan Hooker, because Dan
Hooker Henderson in WEC and Dan Hooker, but not Benson Henson in Bellator. That's a whole nother ball game. Yeah, but who was the can he lost to the last fight?
But we haven't seen
MMA math doesn't work either.
We haven't seen Hooker though.
It doesn't work that way. We're like, oh, Henderson used to be in the UFC, and then he did well here, and then it went over here. So by the transitive property, Chandler has experience in the UFC because it doesn't work that way.
But when I look at it, I see Dan Hooker is supposed to be in his prime. He has lost in his prime to Poirier. When I saw Benson Henderson in his prime, he won. He's past his prime now, but he has that big time experience where he won in the UFC. it wasn't a big fall off. He went to Bellator and he won right away. But obviously he's past his prime. But people forget he's past his prime because in the last 2 fights that he has losses, he's fought Michael Chandler. And everybody forgets, yes, Michael Chandler is a wrestling guy, but he has improved dramatically in the other styles because he kind of would steer away from the wrestling and takedown. But he's improved in those other aspects where he can use those when needed. Well, to me, I feel like Hooker, he can stand up, kickbox. He does that really well. And then striking, but I don't think he doesn't do well when I've seen him get taken down. He wants to stand up, and that's what he wants to do. And then he wants to engage. You were right that when you get into the game plan, you can go to that, but when you get into the fight, you need to stick to it or anything can fall apart. But I feel like with how seasoned Chandler is, he knows what he needs to do, and he knows if he gets off a game plan that he has a backup that he can go to. He's not like a young kid that can get fallen off a game plan and then just goes, let me do whatever. Like, oh, I need to punch, let me punch, or this and that. He has multiple outs and game plans that he can go to. That's why he's a 3-time champion in Bellator. I don't think it just because he's coming from Bellator that means that he's at a disadvantage, a big time disadvantage.
I'm just saying his competition in Bellator is completely a whole nother level compared to what he's about to step into.
Yeah, but it's not like he's fighting Khabib right away or Gage. He's fighting Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker is coming up. You don't know what
Dan Hooker might be that next Gaethje or the next Khabib.
He could, but from what we've saw from him is he can dish it out and take it, but we saw him lose. Whereas with Chandler, we've seen him win lately, and he did it a lot. That's why he was a 3-time champ.
Well, I mean, fights are individual trials.
Yes.
It's kind of like if I do coin toss. If I do 10 coin tosses and they're all heads, it doesn't tell me anything about the 11th coin toss, right?
But when
he's coming off of wins, but he's also stepping into a Shark Tank that he has very little experience with. I mean, like Benson Henderson, yeah, he fought in the UFC, but overall, like Michael Chandler, if let's say if we're kind of like putting people in order, we got like Khabib up here, and then we got like Gaethje and Poirier and Oliveira here, and then down here you've got Dan Hooker. Well, if this is where Dan Hooker is, well, then a lot of the competition that Michael Chandler's been fighting against in Bellator is like down here. So even though Dan Hooker isn't like the best thing ever in UFC, he's still like, he's going to be an unknown quantity in terms of what he's the caliber of fighter that Michael Chandler's used to fighting against from Bellator.
And Chandler beat Benson Henderson. Before that, he was supposed to fight Brent Primus, and Primus pulled out. So then he fought an unknown and some guy named Sidney Outlaw. And then before that, he got knocked out in the first round by Patricio, Pitbull in the first. Yeah. So he doesn't. I don't think he fared well against a striker. I just don't see him winning this fight.
Yeah, but who did Hooker fight before he fought Poirier?
Felder.
He fought Felder, who has been who's a tough ass guy, but he hasn't won. He's been.
I would pick Paul Felder to beat Michael Chandler.
I don't know. I like Felder, and he's from Philadelphia, so I know a lot about him. But I'd still take the proven commodity. The guy, like, I'm not overstretching that because he's come from Bellator. That's not a disadvantage. I'm just saying he's fought a bunch of different style fighters, whereas Hooker is just getting going. He fought a big fight and he lost. But we don't know how he does against like a wrestler or how he does against this or that. We just know what he did against Poirier because that's the only thing that he's had lately. But we do know what Chandler did because he was seasoned. There's a reason why Dana plucked him from Bellator is because
You're not going to give up on him, are you?
I
That's your
won't.
boy. You ride
It's
with
not my
him, man.
point. I just know, the experience factor has something to do with it. Just look at Cormier. Cormier came over. I think he came over. Was it Bellator or was it Strikeforce?
Strikeforce.
Strikeforce.
Yeah, he was
came
one of the
over
guys.
with Rockhold and Woodley, and when they got bought out.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that came over, and then he had immediate success coming over from there. It was right away. He got that lightweight, I think, title shot after being an alternate in the Grand Prix. No one expected him to do that, but because of it, and he's a similar guy. He wrestling background, a little bit older. I think he was 35 to where Chandler's 31. Was it 34? I believe it is.
Chandler 34, yeah.
Yeah, that's
but-
right. He's 34. It's in the comments.
Yeah, but I think Chandler's gonna win. If he loses, he loses. I'll bite in on the chin, whatever. I'll be
Well,
like,
if
I was
Hooker
wrong.
loses, he'll never see me again. I've talked so bad about Michael Chandler. I'll never I'll have to hide my face forever.
Yeah, I feel like this fight is analogous to when I was 15. I was doing full contact tournaments back in the day, and when I was 15, that's when the age group changed for me. Like 14 was the top of like the teenager age group, and then I went up to the adult age group. And like when I was in the teenager age group, holy shit, I dominated that shit. Like I was taking definitely second, but most of the time I'd get first place prizes in a lot of those tournaments. But then I went up to the adult age bracket, which is like 15 to 30 plus. So there's like a huge spread. And I remember my very first fight was against this guy. He was probably like 25 or something. He was probably 3 feet taller than me. Like I was like down here, this guy's like, and I remember it was completely one-sided. They went like, and go. And then the next thing there was just like a foot right here. Like it just happened like that, like 3 consecutive rounds. I was like, oh shit. But turns out that guy had only been like, he was not like a guy who consistently got first place. He was like a 4th, 3rd place fighter in the division. But like me coming up from 15-year-olds trying to compete there, I was too small. I didn't have the physical prowess or the experience to hang. And I feel like that's exactly what's going to happen to Chandler.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but before we waste too much more time on the co-main event that we have, let's move on to the main event of this evening, which is a lightweight division matchup between Dustin Poirier against Connor McGregor, and this is their second fight that they last fought in. I believe it was 2014. I believe it was, where McGregor won that one. What are your predictions for this, Miles?
So this one, oddly enough, I was able to kind of come down more on one side than the other. Whereas like with the Hooker and Chandler fight, I was still like, but even then with this fight, it is still kind of tentative. So I might change my mind. But Poirier, he's got on paper a better grappling background. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's definitely got wrestling experience. It shows in his fighting. And he's got a little bit of KB sprinkled in there. Now I think he's going to go into this, the kind of the X factor for Poirier is that he's going to have something to prove this time around. Like, I think last time that he lost to Connor McGregor, he's evolved a lot since then. I think he's grown a lot, and I think he wants to show that growth by taking out Connor McGregor. I think this is personal for him. So in terms of his fighting ability, what's interesting is the first 3 things I have for Poirier are the same first 3 things I have for McGregor. Because it looks like what's happened since the first Poirier-McGregor fight is that Poirier has almost started to look more like McGregor in his fighting approach. It's a different flavor, but when you break down what he's doing, it's very similar. He's got good movement overall, a lot of forward pressure in his standing game. He's good at fighting at long range, but then he can close that distance quickly when he needs to, just like he did with the Hooker fight, which everybody thought that huge reach advantage would be a big problem, but it was like he could just get in there and hit him whenever he needed to. He's a power striker. He's got a decent amount of striking power behind him. But he also has an excellent sense of timing and gauging, and that's really what allows him to land significant strikes seemingly at will. So, like, again, with the Hooker fight, it seemed like he would have trouble, but he would catch Hooker at opportunities where he wasn't expecting it. And that's really how he was able to get those big shots in just regularly against a much bigger, much lankier guy. He favors a mid guard, which is a little bit lower. It's like down here. It's not quite up here. But what's interesting about that is he's still able to maintain a very tight guard because when you watch him fight, he almost preempts what he thinks the other person is going to do. And a lot of the time, because of the experience he's gained, he's right. Like when you see him like throw shots out there from like a mid guard position, he'll throw a shot, but he'll instinctively come up here. And, you know, you'll find him consistently like defending these headshots, even though his hands start from down here. So he's got a good sense of guard control, even though his hands are a little bit lower than most fighters. Now, some problematic things I see, he's got this weird bong sao sort of thing that he's adopted. It's the thing where he does this, and you see it a lot. He really likes this thing. I don't know what else to call it other than a bong sao. In Wing Chun, it's a block. It's called bong sao. It's this exactly. And it's got some benefits, but it's not like a perfect thing. See, the pros are it lets you cover high and low quarters almost simultaneously. Like if I'm right here, I can just lift to cover this section of my head, and then I can scan across if I need to cover low, or if I need to cover high on this side, I've got something here as a barrier to kind of buffer things off. And that's how you see him use it a lot of the time. He'll kind of come up high to defend his head, or he'll try to parry things low if it's coming towards the rib area. But the problem with that is this doesn't have as much stopping power in terms of a block as this does. This is structurally sound. Like this triangle, there's a reason triangles are very sound in nature, because this structure helps to absorb impact way more effectively than this does. And that's what we see is sometimes when he tries to block something, it's really not much of a block. It still gets through anyway. And when we're talking about the striking power that McGregor has, I don't think you're going to want to walk in there with like a half block, like that's just not a smart idea. So I think that could probably be problematic, especially because this is not super great for head body combinations. Like you can't defend both things at once. You got to pick. And that's one thing McGregor does do is he's more of an unorthodox striker. So if he starts throwing those head body combinations when, Poirier's over here like this, I think he's going to get caught quite a bit. Of course, from the last fight, we saw that Poirier has a lot of impact resistance as well. He can stand and trade with the best of them. He's got great hit recovery. He's also got fight endurance. He hung in there for 5 rounds of freaking Rocky Balboa and Ivan Drago Part 2 in the ring, and he went the whole 5 rounds. He's got excellent takedown defense, and he's got great wrestling ability. He's good at problem solving while he's on the ground. He's got good submission defense, of course, and he will look for those opportunities to submit, which is interesting because you see him like he always tries to go for that guillotine choke, and he never quite gets it. They always find their way out, but he's bless his little heart, he's going to keep trying. Maybe one of these days they'll get it. But he doesn't have that many submission victories in terms of his career. And what's interesting, the only 2 career submissions he has happened before he ever entered the UFC. He's never won by submission in the UFC. So, I mean, his ground game is, that surprised me a little bit too. I was looking through all the things on the website. I was like, no, it's got to be in here. It's got to be, but no, sure enough. So, I think his ground game is mostly to dominate and control, look for those opportunities to wear them out, slow them down, put them back on their feet, and dominate with his striking, because that's really where most of his victories are. And then on the other hand, you got Connor McGregor. He's gained a lot more experience too. Like Poirier has evolved as a fighter since then, that first fight, but so has Connor McGregor. Like back then, I remember Connor McGregor was like this guy, and everybody's like, oh, he's like this weird phenom, because I remember at the time he was talking about like, I've never been in a jiu-jitsu gym. I've never worn a jiu-jitsu gi before. Like I did some boxing with my dad, and I did boxing at a gym, I think, because he was getting into fights or something in high school. But like a lot of the traditional training you would expect an MMA fighter to have, he was bragging that he didn't have it. Well, fast forward to today, he's actually a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt now. Like, he's gotten that experience now. He's gotten that formalized training. Of course, he's also expanded his wrestling quite a bit. We see a different sort of standing grappling Connor McGregor nowadays than we used to back in those days. So it's not like he's stayed the same, right? Now, like I said, the first three things I mentioned with Poirier are pretty much the same things with McGregor, only McGregor did them first. Like, essentially, that's been his method this whole time. He's just refined it over the years. Now, the biggest difference is with the mid guard. McGregor also tends to favor a mid guard. You see him; he's got this almost like traditional kung fu thing where he like has one hand kind of a little bit further out than the other one, and he's always like trying to grab that front hand, try to pull it down, create an opening, that sort of thing. But what's interesting is while Poirier maintains a tight guard control, McGregor uses movement and evasion more. Like, he's not super worried about getting these hands up to cover. He'll just sort of slip and move and evade to get out the way. Now, in terms of his wrestling, like I said, he's come a long way. But even now, he's not like a super technical, like he's not a Michael Chandler, right? Like he's not going to win the NAACP Division I championship anytime soon, but he's better. He's refined his wrestling ability through experience, mostly, like going in with guys who are much better wrestlers, who do know what they're doing. And over time with his coaching and just, metal or what's the term? Steel sharpens steel. He goes in against these real experienced wrestlers and he picks things up from that experience. Now, in terms of his ground game, he's not really one to go for submissions. I think he's on like one in his career. I don't even know if that even happened in the UFC. Yeah, one career submission victory, but it happened before he entered the UFC. So no, he's never had a UFC submission victory. But instead, his ground game is all about maintaining good pressure and control, and then peppering in his strikes and trying to get them to essentially either one, wear them out, tire them out, and then knock them out when they're on their feet, or just finish it with ground and pound, just depending on the scenario. But he doesn't spend a lot of time even really looking for submissions. Doesn't seem like a thing he's concerned with, even though now he actually has the training and the expertise to do that kind of thing. We just don't see it a lot. Now, in terms of the final decision, if we're looking at KO or technical knockout, it could go either way, and this is probably the scenario I struggle with the most, because Poirier's come a long way, and like I said, he's adopted a lot of the same methods that make McGregor successful, and he's got the striking power to do it. But I would still have to go with McGregor on a knockout victory, based on the fact that he is more seasoned at using this approach than Poirier is, because Poirier's adopted it. He's always had it. It's like when Batman was fighting Bane and he like disappeared in the shadows. He's like, oh, you've only adopted the darkness. I was born in it. That's basically the same thing we're talking about here, right? So I would say just because McGregor is better at doing the thing than he is, I would give it to McGregor, but by a narrow margin. Like, don't be surprised if we see a Poirier knockout, because he's come a long way. So it'd be interesting to see kind of how these two fight it out and see who's grown more since the last fight. Now, in terms of a submission, if Poirier is smart, this is going to be his avenue to victory. Like, this would be the game plan. I don't necessarily think this is what he's going to try to do. Like I said, it's Poirier who's got to fight the fight, not his coach who comes up with the game plan. And I think Poirier is going to want to knock out because McGregor knocked him out. And so it's like a tit for tat, now I knocked you out. What's up? So I think that's in his mind. I think that's where he's going to be at mentally. But if he wanted to, obviously his wrestling experience and his submission expertise, he could use that to wear McGregor down, very similar to how Khabib did. Khabib, he traded with McGregor, sure, but really what wore out McGregor was just having to fend off all that grappling and just constantly problem solving and having his options taken away from him. Poirier could do that with his wrestling, and then over time maybe slip in a submission. Probably not like a guillotine, maybe an arm bar. He's not good at the guillotines yet. He's still trying though. And then if it goes to decision, based on the stats, I would give it to Poirier. He's got more career decision victories. He's also on average, he lands more punches per minute. He absorbs fewer punches per minute. And he has more takedowns on average, probably because of his background. And especially when you look at the stats between these guys, besides those categories, everything else is pretty much dead even. So the guy who's got these slight advantages, if it goes to the cards and they fight as they normally would, then that's what we would expect to see. But I don't necessarily see this going to decision. I think this is a grudge match. This is gonna be personal. So
On to you, Sam.
I think we need to look at the timeline. So I wrote down some notes for this one because I can't remember everything. All right. Conor McGregor's last fight at lightweight was when he beat Eddie Alvarez for the belt. That was 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, he's lost to Khabib in 2018. He's lost to Floyd Mayweather 2017. Sorry, I went backwards. And then his last fight was January 20th. January 18th, he beat Cowboy at welterweight, which didn't impress me one bit. Really didn't. Since 2017, just like with Conor, we've seen Dustin Poirier beat Jim Miller, a no DQ with Eddie Alvarez, Anthony Pettis, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, Max Holloway, and then lost to Khabib. We're talking about a completely different fighter, as you said, Miles, when we're talking about Dustin Poirier here. I don't think McGregor realized just what time can do to you when you're off for as long as he has been and non-competitive. And then you're fighting a guy that's been as competitive with the very best in the division since pretty much you last fought. Since they last fought in 2014, Dustin's been fighting everybody, and he's been winning. The move up in weight from featherweight to lightweight was huge for him. They fought at featherweight last time. McGregor's a big featherweight, like he's a big lightweight. He's a big guy. I mean, we just saw him fight at welterweight. He's got the frame for welterweight. So I wouldn't say easily, but if I were going to bet, I think Dustin Poirier shocks everybody with this one, and I don't even think it should be a shot. Dustin Poirier is a great fighter. He's got beautiful striking. He can hang in there and take a punch. I think he beats Conor McGregor this fight. I think it's probably a decision. I don't think it's going to be a knockout. I think Poirier edges him out on a decision. Conor does not have the best gas tank, but then again, Poirier's been known to kind of gas toward the end of some fights too. So I'm going to go with Dustin Poirier, and I'm going to give it a decision. And that's the reason I don't think Khabib comes back, is because he's already dominated Dustin Poirier. So that's why I'm kind of getting that. Khabib's not going to want to fight a Charles Oliveira or somebody that doesn't bring name value like, a Poirier or a Gaethje, and he's beat everybody. So I'm going with Poirier in this one, guys. About you, Bakes.
The one thing with me that hasn't been talked about with this fight, where like the first fight McGregor won, is the mind games. A big thing that McGregor does is he gets inside of his opponent's head with the trash talk and everything like that. And what he did in the first fight was he got inside Poirier's head. Big time, just leading up to the fight. And then Poirier wanted nothing to do but to beat the shit out of him, got out of his game plan, and
got caught.
Him. He got caught. And I feel like it's not going to be any different. I might see Poirier be a little bit more mature dealing with it, but at the same time, he's going to want that in the back of his head. He's going to have that revenge factor where he wants to redeem himself for losing to McGregor. And I think when you've seen past fights other than Khabib's just a different breed. Khabib took out both Poirier and McGregor the same way with the rear naked choke. They actually had like a meme out of a picture of Poirier and McGregor, and it says the main event of 257. It shows Khabib choking them both out. But with McGregor is he gets inside the guys' heads. He got inside Poirier. He got inside Aldo big time. He got inside him big time. He got inside Eddie Alvarez a little bit, not too much. I
think bad.
I think he lost the Diaz fight the first time, but I think that was because he was training for Alvarez came in, and then a week with a week left in the fight, Alvarez got hurt. They were praising him with Diaz, and McGregor was like, okay, whatever, I'm not going to train any differently. He took it lightly, and then he got beat because it was a different style. He came into it lazy, and that's why you saw in the second fight, he took it seriously, and it was still a great fight, but he won the fight. And then the theme with the McGregor is, with a lot of his fights, is does he come in training the right way, or is he going to take it lightly? You've seen him, even the Khabib one, I thought he came into that lightly because it was right after he did the boxing fight with Floyd Mayweather. I thought he did that, won him, got a lot of money from that, and then came in and was like, I can just take this fight lightly because it's Khabib.
He was big-headed.
Yeah, he was big-headed. And then he got beat. And then afterwards, he took like 6 months off, and then he got his mind right and wasn't big-headed, and then he fought Cowboy, and he came in that fight fresh and ready to go, and he trained for it, and he caught him with the shoulder, but he came in like a bat out of hell. He came in storming at Cerrone and caught him off guard and knocked him out in less than a minute. It's always a matter of how is he going to do it. He can psych you out, or he can come in, train, and then come at you. And then, just like Miles said, he likes to put the arm out to keep the guy at bay, and it's kind of his blocking mechanism is him keeping him at leg.
It helps him find range too.
Yeah,
he finds really good range with it. He's
yeah,
precision.
And then he comes in, and he's probably one of the best power punchers in that division. I'll put him at maybe number one, because when he hits you, it hurts. It really hurts. And then he's shown that with the guys he's knocked out, and Aldo, Alvarez, Poirier. He knocked him out. He knocked out Seaver. Even he beat up Max Holloway earlier on. I think that was the fight that he had after Poirier at that time. It was an older time, but he was able to do that. And then if you look at Poirier, what he did to Holloway, that's what Holloway struggled with, is those guys that are coming at you with the power punches hitting you first. McGregor's going to try and attack you first, but he's going to use the mind games to kind of try and get you off that game. And I feel like he's going to have that tactic in play with this fight. He's going to kind of jerk around, laugh, get Poirier going and get him over aggressive than what he should be, and try and catch him trying to go for the early hit, and he's going to move away like he does, and then he's going to hit Poirier. And I feel like this, I don't think it's a first round, but I feel like McGregor's going to win with a second round knockout, because the longer it goes, the better it looks for Poirier. Even though Poirier kind of got gassed down against Hooker, but then Hooker got plucked with a hit, and that kind of helped out Poirier get his gas tank a little bit back. It ramped him back up because he got excited. He's like, boom, I got him hit now. Now he's rocked like me, so it's anybody's game. And that kind of got him going again. I haven't had to see that from McGregor, so I don't know what to expect from it. So to me, it's either McGregor's going to have to win like that, which he's done before, or if the fight goes later on, I'm going to favor Poirier a little bit more, to where I think it's either going to be a second round knockout by McGregor or a decision victory by Poirier, because I know he can last that long, and he's done it several times. But I'm going to lean towards the knockout by McGregor, because I've seen him do it before to Poirier. And then a little known thing that I've seen Poirier do, sometimes he leaves himself open too much. Yeah, like you said, like he goes like this. Sometimes he just leaves him I think it's his left side. It's either left side or right side. I'm not sure. He tends to leave it open a little too much. Whereas if a guy that's really good with striking can notice it, he can catch him at the right time. And I think that's how McGregor caught him the first time. So if he doesn't defend that the way he should, this could go even shorter. But I think he could take a little bit more punishment now compared to what he did before. and that's why I think it's the second round, because I think McGregor's just heads and toes ahead of most of the class when it comes to his striking. But to me, it's gonna be really exciting to watch, because these two have been through some fights with each other and then with other guys, and just this whole card has the potential to be one of the best cards of the year. It won't be better than the card in March, I'll tell you that, but I think that it'll be able to stand out in the future as being one of the top 5 of the year, if all the fights live up to the hype.
Well, it's usually these big cards that disappoint us, and it's the little cards like we had Saturday that, aren't really meant to be the main eventers that really show out. It's always, hopefully it's a good card.
Yeah.
And that's why, like you were talking before, you were saying these two guys have lost to Khabib, and there already hasn't been competition. And the way I saw Max, I'm like, that is competition for him. Even though because I won't have to worry about Khabib striking him, because I think Khabib would be more worried about the takedown and trying to pressure him and go for the takedown. I could see Max coming in strong with the combinations to slow him down. We could say that, and then Khabib could still do what he does best.
I mean,
But-
what they said about Gaethje is like, oh, he's got all that striking power. What's Khabib gonna do? Submission.
But we did see
That was the answer.
But we did see him struggle with it in the first round. But we saw Gaethje kind of being all erratic with how he was dealing with it.
I mean, that's
But,
one of the things I said when we were looking at Gaethje. I was like, well, he's got striking power, but he's not all that technically proficient, because what he does is he uses his movement to cover the gaps of what you would normally need to have to be technically proficient. Because he doesn't really have as developed a skill set for that particular thing. He's really a wrestling guy, which wrestlers have excellent body kinesthetics. They understand how their body moves through the air. And so that's what he would do. He could use his general movement and his sense of gauging and timing to land those real big hits without having to be like a professional boxer. And so when he goes up against Khabib, who is probably between the two the more technically proficient striker, we just see him not being able to land those hits as easily. And I remember I was watching him fight. It was at Buffalo Wild Wings. I actually showed that fight. When I was watching him, he was mostly swinging at air. I was like, oh, he's going to throw that big hit, because you could tell he was loading it up, and then he swung, and then Khabib just moved out the way. And then he got him once. Like, there was one time in that fight that I think Gaethje got him, and he wasn't expecting it. That ba combination where he went high and then smacked him in the ribs, and then you saw Khabib go like, oh fuck. Like, I think that's the one time he caught him and he wasn't expecting it. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. Max Holloway's good. I like Max Holloway. I think he's a very interesting striker. But Khabib is just, we've seen this before, where it's like, yeah, they're good strikers and they got a lot of power and they got a lot of options when it comes to stand up, doing stuff on their feet. But he's just so good at being like, no, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna take this to the ground, and I'm just gonna take away.
I just want to see it, because Max is really his thing is speed and combinations. He's not more power. It's more speed and combinations. Keep himself on the move. He has that 5-round endurance. He looked stronger in round 5 than he did in round 1.
He does have a big gas tank,
yeah. And so it's like he could get taken down, but I feel like his gas tank will stay the same or not go down too much. His weakness has been the elite strikers like Poirier. He got beat up by that because Poirier just came at him with the power punches right away and wore him out that way because he took too much damage. And Poirier was the one to initiate the contact first, like Kattar should have done. And then even McGregor too. But other than that, I've seen usually Holloway's the one to engage first. Khabib kind of counters his guys. He kind of counters them, let them do it, and then he comes back in, pressures them. But I would like to see how Khabib reacts when he got a guy like that who engages first, but he comes at him with a bunch of combinations. It's not just power hit, recharge, come back around, power hit. It's shot, kick, come back around, shot, kick. It's like several things at once, so he has to process it all, which I haven't seen him have to do that much. I've seen him deal with a lot of power guys and not a lot of combo speed guys that can endure a 5-round fight. Because McGregor, he can't endure that. Poirier, he can, but his gas tank isn't the best. Who's another guy? El Akita, he doesn't do much damage. He can go 5 rounds. He went 5 rounds with him, but he
didn't do anything.
He didn't do. He didn't do anything. Who am I missing? What guy that Khabib has fought lately?
Michael Johnson.
Lately. Who is it? Because he only defended the belt 3 times.
Yeah.
But when he defended it was against like power guys that kind of
his last 3 have been Gaethje, Poirier, and Iaquinta.
Yeah, and then
that's it.
We haven't seen him fight that guy with endurance that doesn't worry about the big shot, that he just worries about volume and builds it up. I want to see how he does against that. That's why I feel like Holloway could be a guy to challenge him and give him a different matchup problem to where where it would be something to see him beat him last, because then it's like, okay, I fought these power guys, but I never fought a guy like Holloway where he's all about volume and he can go the whole distance. And then he could keep me from doing the ground game because he's constantly hitting me, keeping me from like getting ready to go. Like I'm getting ready to go, boom, he hits me. Then he kicks me with a kick. Then he comes at me with a backhand. He keeps pressuring you. That's what he did with Kattar. He pressured him. That's what he did early on with Volkanovski. What Volkanovski did later on, which Khabib could do, is then get the ground game going later on. But we don't know how Khabib could do later on. We don't know how he does. I would think that he would be able to do that, but we just don't know because all of Khabib's stuff usually lasts early. And then the only 1 or 2 that lasted later on, the guys weren't really good strikers where it didn't really matter. He had them beat, and then they were just in there to last for the end of the fight to say that they didn't get beat by anything other than decision. But like I want to see that. I'm probably one of the 10% that do. A lot of people want McGregor or maybe Poirier again. I want to see Max Holloway. I want to see something fresh.
I think
I want to see him retire. I want to see him retire.
That too. I wouldn't mind that, but he's going to have that one last fight to get him to that 30-0.
He hates that weight cut, man. It gets harder every time for him.
But just seeing him retire at that 29-0 just looks weird. It'll look better at 30-0, and it'll make it like more like boom, like kind of like Mayweather. Mayweather got the 50-0 and then he retired. He didn't want to stay at 49-0 and with his boxing record. He was like boom, 50-0, I'm done, and then he retired. But we're done with the predictions finally, almost 3 hours later.
Yep.
which is fine. But if you want to catch any of our other live podcasts, we got a wider range of podcasts on here, stemming all the way from all the sports to entertainment. And we just added a movie and TV one in Whiskey Cinema on Sunday nights, which I believe will be they'll be premiering back on our network this week or next week. I forget what it is, but we've just brought them in. They're great guys, and they always have good shows with different themes. Like yesterday, it was Sword and Stone theme, so they were talking about shows and movies that had to do with swords and shields. That's what it is. So they did a little bit of talk about that. But here's our video for the schedule for the each week on the Buzz.
War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Bringing that to competitors. Do we see the confetti fall? Be ready for war. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Bringing that to competitors. Do we see the confetti fall? Be ready for war. Tell them I'm ready, any opponent. The crown heavy and every minute is chosen. A path only fit for kings, and you won't know what this court means. What did you enlist for? If it isn't getting more rings, then you gon' have to switch your team. Trust me, it gets more mean. I'm a nightmare going up against your dreams. First step is explosive like a bomb hit. Bet if I let it fly, I cannot miss. And you ain't got a chance at the top 10 when you getting clamped all night by a locksmith. On the block, throwing lobs to my top bigs. I'm a chef, no look, with the top dish. Tie game, through the pressure as the clock ticks. Crossover, step back, hit a shot, swish. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Tell them that's what we ready for. War. Bringing that to competitors. Do we see the confetti fall? Be ready for war. This is how champions are made, but it never happens in a day. It's all hard work, but it's why what happens when we play 9 out of 10 times. I'ma lap you.
Do you guys have any parting words before we get going?
Hey, it was a pleasure, and I'll see you guys after the pay-per-view.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, no, actually, I got a interesting announcement. So, starting on the 28th, actually, normally the Laughs and Rec podcast is an audio only podcast, but starting on the 28th, it's going to be a hybrid podcast. I'm changing up my schedule a little bit to where every week there's going to be both audio and video streaming content available. It's going to be through my Twitch channel. Obviously, I'll be promoting the buzz on there as well. But we'll be doing alternating weeks for Tuesday, Thursday on the live streams. And, of course, audio content every Friday. It'll be alternating between full episodes and mini episodes. But the first one will be on the 28th. It's going to be great. We're going to be doing a deep dive. Thursdays will typically be deep dives where I go into very specific topics or we look at a specific thing and we spend the whole stream talking about that. I'm going to have on Samantha from the Random Acts of Self podcast. She has a lot of psychological expertise, and we are going to be making fun of pickup artistry as an industry and how it's a bunch of pseudoscientific bullcrap. And then the following Tuesday, I'm having on Jim from the Friday Night Music Party. Guys real into politics and nerd stuff. And we're going to do every Tuesday is going to be a variety show. We got a bunch of stuff on the board. We spin the wheel, and whatever the wheel lands on, that's what we'll talk about.
Oh, that's cool.
Right now, I think we've got Andrew Tate videos lined up. We've got Nerdiverse stuff where we talk about MCU, DC Universe stuff. We got I think it's conspiracy theories and sovereign citizen stuff. And of course, we've got Chud Watch, which is like politics and things like that. So it'll be a lot of fun. Those two are going to be a good way to kind of start off the new schedule. But I think that'll make me the first hybrid podcast. I know we were talking about another one who wanted to do that, but I think I got there first. I don't know. But yeah, no, tune in for all of that. It's gonna be real cool. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And of course, I'll be on here doing MMA stuff because I don't get to do that enough, especially with quarantine and stuff. These walls are my friends now. They could tell stories. People would be horrible. No, I'm just kidding.
Yep, and once again, that's the Laughs and Rec podcast on you said Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Thursday, right around 5 or 6 p.m. Central is probably when the streams will start. They'll probably be 3-4 hours. So just tune in anytime and you'll catch some good stuff.
Yeah, so catch that. And you said Twitch, right?
It's gonna be on Twitch. Right now I'm using StreamYard, so I think they're also allowing me to stream at other I think I can do Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I got to set that up. But right now it's Twitch. But obviously I'll be tweeting it out, and there will be a live stream link for Facebook and Twitter. So lots of places you can find it, but Twitch is the home base.
Yeah. So for the most part, follow him on Twitter on his at the Laughs and Rec podcast every Tuesday and Thursday at 6 Central Time. We'll say. And then if you want to catch Sam, catch his great articles called Devil's Advocate, where he does a bunch of articles on MMA. He has done a few on wrestling that have been really good. So catch him there on the Buzz's Facebook or Twitter, where we post all of our articles. And then I'm not sure if we're going to cover next week, after next Monday, where we'll cover because I think there's 2 weeks before the Alistair Overeem Alexander Volkov fight night,
February 9th.
which is
Yeah.
actually, I think it's February 6th. Yeah, February 6th it is. We might cover that. If not, we'll definitely be covering UFC 258, which is Burns and Usman. That card's going to be really good with them headlining it. I've been waiting a while for it since July. It should be a great matchup with Burns being the guy that moved up from I think he moved up from lightweight,
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah, lightweight. A guy that Hooker did beat. That's who Hooker did beat. It was Burns before he moved up, and then before he started taking all these fights left and right and got himself in the position for Usman. But we'll definitely be covering that around, because that fight's the 13th. So expect us to definitely be on I think it's the 8th. Yeah, it's February 8th. So we'll definitely be on February 8th. That Monday at 8 o'clock to cover that card. And then we're going to try and be covering a little bit more than just once a month. I'm trying to do at least 2 to 3 times a month at the least, so we can be more active, because with the UFC, there's a lot of action. There's a lot of cards now than there used to be. And we want to be able to help you guys with our predictions. So definitely tune in, subscribe to The Buzz on Twitter or YouTube, and like on Facebook, and check out all the stuff that we have to offer. And don't hesitate to comment on our live podcasts. If there's anything you want to see on Cage My IQ, let us know, and we'll get back to you on it. But I'm D-Bake, and this is Sam, and this is Miles, and you guys have a nice night.
Be good, fellas.